Jawaharlal Nehru to win a third straight term. On the other, we have an opposition which is putting its differences aside for a joint fight. The BJP, which is in perpetual election mode, is banking on its twin formula of welfarism and development. Since coming to power in 2014, the Modi government has unveiled several schemes for the upliftment of the poor and backward class. At the same time, the thrust has been on inclusive development to fulfill the hopes and aspirations of the nation. Keeping that in mind, the Modi government is pushing for a uniform civil code.
यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड के नाम पर ऐसे लोगों को भड़काने का काम हो रहा है। ऐसी दोहरी व्यवस्था से देश कैसे चल पाएगा?
India is the fifth largest economy in the world and also a hub of digital transactions. Our geopolitical heft has been growing with more and more nations wanting to engage with and invest in India. This is our G20 presidency year. And together with PM Modi's diaspora diplomacy, India's global image stands enhanced. The transformation of India in 9 years of the Modi government is clear to see. But the opposition can't be written off. The Congress is riding high on its victories in Himachal Pradesh and the big election in Karnataka.
हमने मोहब्बत से, प्यार से, दिल खोल के ये लड़ाई लड़ी और कर्नाटक की जनता ने हमें दिखाया मोहब्बत इस देश को अच्छी लगती है।
Rahul Gandhi's disqualification as a member of parliament was unanimously condemned by the opposition. The likes of Mamata Banerjee and Arvind Kejriwal, who don't see eye to eye with the Congress, joined the united opposition meeting with Rahul Gandhi in Patna in June. But challenges remain. The anti-BJP camp is divided between pro-Congress and anti-Congress. Most are against giving the leadership role to Congress. If the new alliance takes shape, there are also many contenders for the opposition's face for 2024. The biggest jolt to opposition unity came in the form of the great Maharashtra coup 2.0. With Ajit Pawar joining the BJP Shinde Sena government, the NCP is divided and the Maharashtra Vikas Aghadi is on shaky ground. So, can a so-called united opposition last till 2024? And can they convince voters to put their faith in them? Narendra Modi versus the opposition. Who will end up winning India's vote in 2024?
Before we begin this evening, it is my privilege to invite our managing editor, Mr. Zakir Jacob, to shed further light on our vision for the CNN News 18 Town Hall and also provide insights into what awaits us tonight. Zakir, please.
Thank you very much, Grihab. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the CNN News 18 Town Hall. It's good to be back where it all started. We started the Town Hall series from Delhi in June of 2022, and in July of 2023, we're back here in Delhi. And what a setting, what a platform, because we've got less than 1 year to go for the big general election, the big battle of 2024. And what timing, some would say, because today, even as we speak, there's a big meeting of all the opposition leaders in Bengaluru. Tomorrow there is a big meeting of the NDA, a new look NDA. I think top of mind of all the people who've come here, the audience members, the panelists, I think the top of mind question is, what is going to happen in 2024? Will Modi come back? Will Modi come back with just as big a majority as he got in 2019 and in 2014? Or will he get a bigger majority? Or will his majority be reduced? What happens to all of these opposition parties? What is the index of opposition unity? Will they be able to stick together? How will they find common candidates across 543 constituencies? And at the end of the day, what does the vote for 2024 mean? These are the questions that we're going to thrash out through the course of this evening. It also happens to be India's G20 year. We have seen just in the last 2 or 3 weeks the profile of India being elevated, first in the visit to the United States and then more recently the visit to France. There is a sense in world capitals, and I was there in Washington and New York covering the visit to the United States. There is a sense in global capitals that New Delhi is the place to be, that India is the country to take the long-term bet on. So all of these we will discuss through the course of what is going to be a wonderful evening. So I want to thank all of you, wonderful ladies and gentlemen, for joining us tonight for the CNN News 18 Town Hall. Let me also take this opportunity to bring you up to speed with the transformation that is happening in news television. CNN News 18 has been the #1 channel on the BARC TRP ratings for the last 60 weeks. And it's not just in television. We're also in off-platform, in YouTube and in Facebook. We are now the #1 most consumed English news brand. In the month of June, we had 155 million views on YouTube and 75 million views on Facebook. So thank you very much to our viewers. Just a short visual clipping to track this journey of CNN News 18 over the last 1 year. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the CNN News 18 Town Hall.
Himachal Pradesh is the worst in the...
Modern India's revolutionary news channel that stands a cut above the rest. When style meets substance and class aligns with credibility. When news is about information.
I'm standing at a porous border between India and Nepal. The smuggling of illegal goods and narcotics has created a huge menace in this area.
When news is about placing the facts on the table.
CNN News 18 deep dive into the operational details of syndicates operating blatantly in national capital and the state of Punjab.
When news is about stating the hard truth in a simple manner.
How do you explain, sir, that 2 out of 3 Muslim women are in favor of uniform laws when it comes to civil matters?
The viewer reposing faith in India's #1 channel week after week.
Our relationship with Russia has been very, the bandwidth is very narrow.
63 weeks of TRP leadership stands testimony to Team CNN News 18.
This so-called larger alliance is not adding votes to any of their candidates.
As the dust settles, there is just one winner.
समाजवादी पार्टी और सत्य है, ये नदी के 2 किनारे हैं.
As the modern world moves quickly into Digiverse, CNN News 18 is the only channel to upgrade its ecosystem with a brand new studio and digital-friendly newsroom. CNN News 18 takes a giant leap towards the future. Surpassing the reach on TV, CNN News 18's digital rise has been nothing less than phenomenal. A quantum jump in views and a staggering rise in subscribers, leaving the self-proclaimed legacy channels way behind. As India's global power comes to the fore, CNN News 18 is poised to usher in a new era in the English news space. Redefining, rediscovering, re-etching an exclusive space for modern India.
Thank you so much for that. And with that, let's commence our evening of enlightening conversations and analysis. Our first panel discussion features a remarkable individual whose pivot from engineering to entrepreneurship and onwards into politics is what shaped his story. A story of epiphany and determination. As the Minister of State for Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, as well as Electronics and Information Technology of India, he has spearheaded advancements in critical and emerging technologies. His vision for India as a global powerhouse of artificial intelligence and his dedication of incorporating disruptive technologies into our nation's fabric are commendable. During India's G20 presidency, he is spearheading efforts to make India's technology capabilities available to any country that is interested in joining this accelerated digitalization trend. Also, how can we go without acknowledging his efforts in UPI expanding its global footprint and France being the latest addition? Please join me in welcoming onto the stage Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar along with our managing editor Mr. Anand Narasimhan.
Namaste everybody. Namaste sir, thank you very much.
Thank you Anand, thank you.
So the CNN News 18 Town Hall comes back into the national capital on a day where we have a town hall happening in your uru sir, Bengaluru.
Let's call it a town hall if you want to equate what's going on here with the group of people who are trying desperately to be relevant in Bengaluru. You did it, I didn't do it. Look, this is a democracy. People are free to do what they want to do. People are free to align with who they want to align with. And people are also free to be deluded into believing that they can do something that they cannot. So, it's fine.
You believe it's a delusion, but a Congress is ready to back an AAP ordinance in Delhi. Those who got ousted are now coming together. They seem to be determined to keep the BJP out.
Look, I'm not approaching this as a minister or as a politician, but just as common sense tells me that if your entire unity, if you want to call it that, is about disliking one person, and that you have nothing positive to offer to 1.2 billion Indian, 1.3 billion Indians who are all very anxious now, keen to see India develop, continue the type of development that we have seen in the last 9 years. And all you have is essentially gali galoch, as they say in Hindi, or fear-mongering and appeasement. If that's all you have in 2023 after 76 years of independence, then I think the people of India will certainly speak in 2024 as they have in 2019 and as they have in 2014. And the people of India know exactly what the future holds for them, what the opportunities are, and what the potential of this great nation is now unfolding in front of their eyes. And I can't imagine anybody who's a right-thinking person, who cares about his family, will ever want to derail this momentum or slow down this momentum in any way, just because a group of people who between them cannot succeed think that sum of a few zeros is more than a zero.
But wherever the opposition has consolidated, BJP has seen reversals. Be it Bengal, be it in Karnataka, whenever consolidation has happened, it's been
I think
tough mountain to climb for the BJP.
So, yeah, look, I'm not denying that there is some of that electoral arithmetic that is at play, but you will notice that at every one of those states that you mentioned, our vote share has always increased. The popularity for BJP and the Honorable Prime Minister has always seen an increase. Even in Karnataka, despite a really, let's say, less than truthful campaign run by the Congress party, we managed to retain our vote share. So I think the issue is really that there are some people who think that these elections in our great democracy is about political arithmetic. And we are certainly out there to prove that it is really about doing things for the people, building a better future. And that is the best way to, in a sense, demolish all of these conventional ways of looking at politics and democracy in India.
Do you believe there is somebody, a face in the opposition that can challenge the BJP and the BJP leadership in 2024?
I mean, I can see 15 faces. All of them on a good day don't get along with each other. So, look, that's not our business. That is certainly not on the list of priorities for the BJP to pick out who their face should be. They will pick out a face, but that is not the point. I don't think elections, especially in this reawakened India, this new India that is really marching forward, I don't think it's about a face. It is really about what is it that you're offering the young Indians, what is it that your economic ideology is, what is your economic thought. And I think in any democracy, if there's a healthy debate of ideas, it's a good thing. But if somebody is believing that a group of dynasts can get together and hark back to those good old days when the grandmother was in power and the father was in power, and oh, I wish I could all get those cozy days back again. I think that train has left the station. This is certainly a new India, and today people want their political parties to deliver, to give them more and more opportunities, take the country forward, and not take it back to the same old unstable political coalitions, the same old weak economics, the same old appeasement type of social chaos. So I think, in a lot of ways, I think India has long since left this type of politics behind.
But how is the BJP any different from Congress of the yore? Because the BJP is also bringing in new partners erstwhile. You're also looking at stitching up coalitions.
Yeah, no, I kind of expected this question, and when I was looking at my schedule this morning, I certainly was sure that you spring this on me. Look, the BJP is a party that is very clear in terms of what we stand for. We are very clear about what we want to do in terms of the country's economy, what we want to do, and what we have done in terms of taking care of the challenges that haven't been solved for several decades in India. And if other parties have begun to see, traditional parties who have allied with the same old type of politics, if they're suddenly beginning to see that the direction that India is going in is a direction that makes them less relevant if they are not allied with BJP, I think there is absolutely no fault, there's no problem with that. The BJP is a party that has repeatedly said we have no problem with parties coming and joining our fold as long as we continue the journey. Now, I know the cynics in politics and cynics in amongst journalism say, no, but this, but that, you said this and you said that. But the way to measure us post anybody joining our alliance is, have we changed our direction? Have we changed our political ideology? Have we changed our thought? Have we changed our governance? Have we changed anything that we want to say we want to achieve for the country?
But allow me to press you there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. If you look at O.P. Rajbhar, Ajit Pawar, now there is talk about H.D. Devegowda and the JDS. Them aligning, the larger arithmetic is that you want 6-7% consolidation, so you go up from 52-53% to 58-59%. Now, that's a bold consideration. Even if JDU were to break up and come, you have Jitan Ram Manjhi coming in. How are they ideologically linked to the BJP? And is the BJP not in danger of diluting its own ideological platform?
No, and I think in these town halls you will have people who are much more senior than me in the overall political ecosystem.
I'm asking you because you're an independent MP. Now you're part of the BJP, so I'm asking you this.
No, I absolutely see no problem, and I don't see any reason for us to be remotely defensive about parties stepping up who have traditionally not supported us and saying, no, we support the BJP in its efforts to build this new India, to become the third largest economy in the world, create for the first time ever since independence, true resolution of poverty. I see absolutely no problem with that. But if you think that by parties supporting us, we dilute the goals that we have set for the country, that our Prime Minister has set in terms of direction and vision for our country, that certainly is not going to happen. In a lot of ways, what is going to certainly happen, the space that has been left for dynastic parties that have practiced this kind of appeasement politics, this kind of freebie politics for many, many decades and years, is reducing. The optics of going to Patna, optics of going to Bengaluru, is in my mind something very different from how you are seeing it. I see this almost like a desperate last stand to create relevance for this type of politics, which I believe is diminishing in favor, diminishing in terms of its returns politically. And so therefore, if parties now begun, and I heard the quote from somebody in the NCP that says, look, we went to Patna and I almost laughed because there were a whole bunch of people with no MPs, a whole bunch of people with one MP, and then the whole bunch of people with few MPs. And they all got together to try and argue a case that they were doing something fresh and new for the country when they are actually, in a sense, the legacy of the last 65 years of everything that was wrong with Indian politics. So I think look, we are, as Zaka correctly said at the beginning of the show, we are hitting 2024 elections soon around the corner in a few months. You will see a repeat of what we saw in 2019. You will see a repeat of what we saw in 2014. Maybe a little bit more frantic, maybe a little bit more jointmanship in that. But it is going to be more of the same, which is basically to flay things around, say things that can distract the voter, and say anything but the last 9 years of achievement and progress. That is their objective, and our objective is absolutely the reverse, that which is we will keep repeating what we have done in the last 9 years and what was not done in the last 65 years.
But do you think you've been able to actually communicate and own the narratives? When we talk of critical legislations, which is for the greater good of the country, that's what it was supposed to be, say the CAA or even the farm laws, did you succeed or did you fail?
No, so look, I mean, I can tell you 100 things that we succeeded in. I'm not saying our hit rate on success has been 100%, but I certainly I can tell you with absolutely all confidence that every effort at legislation, every reform that has been put forth has been for the good of India and good for the people. Maybe sometimes the noise and the misinformation have submerged the benefits that could have come out of those bills. And so therefore, we are living in a digital age. We are living where social media certainly can create noisiness and static and all of that. And misinformation has the power to sway people. Misinformation has the power to certainly swamp the truth and elevate the lies. And that plays to the strengths of some political parties who actually live on a politics of misinformation and lies. So maybe those are the reasons for it. I certainly agree that at least on one or two cases which were really good for the country and good for the people, we could not take it forward.
No, but as Maiti Mantri and somebody who's a champion of AI, this AI doesn't seem to be favorably coded for the BJP. If you're saying social media is largely captured by those who amplify misinformation.
No, look, there are two ways of approaching misinformation. We can do what the Congress did during the UPA, which is to put everybody in jail who did a cartoon or did something satirical, misuse the Section 66A, and that is now being done in West Bengal. That is being done, of course, in Kerala, where they should have been the pioneers of it. Given their Marxist background, and also being done by the Congress government in Karnataka. But look, for us, we certainly don't believe misinformation is the same as right to free speech. But there is this debate going on about how do we deal with misinformation. And so we don't want to be heavy-handed about it. We certainly want there to be a consensus where we create almost a national consensus or public opinion that right to free speech should not be conflated with and equated with the power and weaponization of misinformation. And especially in a democracy like ours, where we have now 85 crore Indians online, 120 crore Indians are going to be using the internet by 2025, that misinformation can be truly weaponized and used against not just the state, can be used against individuals, used against organizations, etc. So our approach is getting more and more people on board to understand that these are problems, and then to legislate around the problem rather than to use a stick. And as a consequence, we pay the price for it.
But one of the criticisms for the government is that you allow industries to flourish and then you decide to legislate. Now, the gaming industry is the latest, which is a little upset.
No, yeah. Again, I think this is being oversimplistic. The GST Council's findings is the GST Council. I make an effort to clarify, is not the government of India. The GST Council, as you know, is represented by all the state governments, so it is truly a federal organization, and state governments and state finance ministers and the government of India have come together and created a GST framework. Now that is a consequence of 3 years of work that they have done. And while we may quibble with what they have found and what they have not done, and the industry seems to be unhappy with it, we have to also recognize that the process of creating a regulatory framework for online gaming is only started in January of 2023. And we are only in the early stages, nascent stages of creating a predictable, sustainable, permissible online gaming framework. So we will do that, and we will go back to the GST Council and maybe request their consideration on the facts of the new regulatory framework. But I hear the noise, and I hear some people saying it's anti-constitutional and XYZ, and sorry to say this, but they're totally, certainly wrong.
But as a techpreneur and a neta, do you sometimes have a confusion? Which side of the fence am I sitting in?
No, I think it is better to slowly progress and evolve these frameworks that are sustainable than doing things in a hurry just because you are reacting to a soundbite or to an angry industry or an angry startup, and then create downstream mistakes. We believe today, and the Prime Minister is very clear on, in the digital space, do everything that from a perspective of the next decade, the India decade. So the laws, the rules, all go through detailed, deep consultation with stakeholders, and then we get people on board. The online gaming rules that have come out went through almost 3.5 months of consultation. And I want to tell you that what the government started with and what we ended with were totally different as a consequence of the consultation. So it's better to do it right than to do it fast.
Okay, so there's still hope for the gaming industry. You're saying you may go back to the GST Council. I have limited time, so one more important aspect. Interestingly, ladies and gentlemen, as an independent MP, he championed the cause of Christian women in the Coorg and Mysore regions in Karnataka to get them the right for inheritance. So let me ask you, sir, is UCC a poll gambit by the BJP? Why are you waking up to it after 9 years? Or do you really believe that the time is right for a common civil code?
Look, I mean, I'm nobody to say whether the time is right or the time is not right. I was recently in Kerala, and I had somebody put a mic in front of my face and said, the CPM is doing a workshop on the UCC. And I asked them how many women were in the workshop. And it turns out that they had invited no women, but they were waxing eloquent about UCC being this terrible thing. What the Honorable Prime Minister said in Bhopal is worth repeating and repeating again. Because he said something in the context of Tushtikaran, appeasement. And he asked a question to the country. Why is it that something that our founding fathers, including Dr. Ambedkar ji, why is it that something that Article 44 in the Constitution, why is it that something that Supreme Court and the courts of the land have said should be done, has not been done, which is the Universal Civil Code, Uniform Civil Code? That was the question he asked. He never said that we are bringing it. He never said there is a draft. Now, instead of answering the question that he has posed, for which the answer is very clear, it is appeasement politics of the last 65 years. Instead of that, the opposition parties, especially the Congress, are speaking to the UCC about everything but that. And I think it is worth asking that question again and again. I certainly don't want to give you my views on whether there should be a UCC or not. I can certainly tell you that as I travel around the country and I meet people and I talk to them about many other things, when this topic comes up, the overwhelming sense that I get that India is a great country, we are going places, we are becoming an economic power, and there should be certainly one type of citizen, and therefore there should be one broad uniform citizen. This is what people tell me. I don't have a view on it.
So even in matrilineal societies like Kerala, in Nagaland, they're saying, what about the tribals?
No, so
if you have a UCC, can we have exemptions?
No, I don't want to be drawn into a controversy about what is it going to be. There is no draft. Nobody knows about what it says and what it doesn't say. All today we are talking about is that these basic principles of uniformity in adoption, inheritance, women's rights have been flagged by our founding father. Dr. Ambedkar ji said it. The Supreme Court has said it. The Constitution says it. So the question that has to be asked today is, why have we as a country on the move not done it for the last so
it's
years?
Not a poll gambit to break some votes, get the women from certain sections towards the BJP?
We don't do anything that is a poll gambit, but I certainly think the conduct of political parties who were in charge of government for the last 65 years, what they did not do is legitimate for any debate and discourse by those now pretending that they should be, they should be sort of considered for a vote in the 2024 elections.
Rajivji, final 3 minutes I have on my clock. So you have a placard right to your right next to you, to your right. there, just below your phone. So you can keep your folder there.
Okay.
And you have to just see it's yes and no. Okay. So some questions which will be yes and no.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. And we'll see how we go. Okay. My first question is, kursi comfortable hai? Aap kursi pe comfortable hai?
Ye kursi pe.
Pun is intended, sir.
Okay. I'm fine. Okay.
Okay. Are you keen to contest Lok Sabha 2024?
I'm keen to do whatever my bosses tell me to do.
Okay. Plan to shift from Bengaluru to Kannur?
To Kannur?
Kerala? To contest from Kerala, so your sites.
Oh, I thought you wanted me to move
no, sites in Kerala. So that's what I'm saying.
Again, I think beyond a yes or a no, I don't know.
Okay. Would you want anyone from your family to consider joining politics? Okay. Have you ever started a speech and realized, "Arey, ye to galat wala pad raha hu"? Never. Okay. Rajiv Chandrasekhar ko gussa aata hai? Okay. कभी-कभी. Okay. Rajiv Chandrasekhar पे किसी को गुस्सा आता है?
I have no idea. That is somebody else has to answer that question.
Do you see an AI-powered anchor interviewing you in the near future?
Oh, absolutely.
गई अपनी नौकरी खतरे में. Okay. Do you have days when you think, let me just go back to corporate?
No, never.
No?
No, not since 2006, no.
Not since 2006. Okay. Ever had a heated debate with somebody in Parliament and then 15 minutes later you're having chai in the canteen? Opposition?
Yeah, of course. Maybe.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. My final question to you is, PM Modi se, PM sir se kabhi डांट पड़ी है? Or he's ever praised you? Feel good moment?
No, again, I don't know if there's a yes or no, but I don't think he has praised me, but certainly he has pointed out when I've been wrong, or when I have not done, we have not done the homework as much as he wanted us to do it.
So did you smash a few TVs in the office after that?
No, of course.
No. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji.
Thank you.
We have just 20 seconds on the clock, so I'm going to check if we can take one question if it is possible.
Yes,
do we have the time?
Anand, I've been told that Dr. Sanjeev Bagai over here has a question.
Oh, Dr. Bagai is here. Namaste, sir. Good to have you here at our CNN News 18 Town Hall. Ji.
Evening, sir. First, I want to thank the Indian government and the media, all sections of media, for such a successful campaign, not only from fighting COVID, but the largest, fastest, and the safest vaccine campaign to fight COVID. I think India has done one amongst the better countries worldwide. Having said that, what really helped was the COVID app. What really helped was the seamless connectivity in terms of the digitalization. My questions are two, sir. One is, can we have a framework in which the smaller units of public health and private healthcare to have more digitalized formats going forward? And the second question is, can we have our own Indian but international pandemic alert center? We should not rely on any data from overseas when it concerns the Indian subcontinent. Yeah. John Hopkins is good, Mayo is good, India is better. Over to you, sir.
Yeah. Both of them, I will say yes. They are not really my domain. It's Mansukh Bhai Manvia's domain, both of them. But certainly the need for a platform to include and allow integration of all health and wellness providers is a good idea, and I think they're already working on it, the Health Ministry. On the other issue, I'll certainly escalate it or pass it on to Dr. Manvia.
One more? Anybody else? Yes. Shireen, my colleague will come to you, so please wait. And I have a request, please keep your questions short so that we can hear a longer answer from the Minister.
Sir, you just mentioned about getting inheritance rights for women in Coorg. So if we have the UCC, can we women in the country hope that there will be centralized inheritance laws for women all over the country, and inheritance will no longer be a state subject? Because very often, especially being in Delhi, as a lawyer, I come across women from the state of Uttar Pradesh primarily, who are denied any rights of inheritance in the property. So while we are talking about UCC, let us have
have a centralized uniform law for inheritance for women?
Yeah, I think your point is right, and I think there should be. I just want to touch on what Anand mentioned. Even I was surprised that this lady, who was a friend of our families, who was a Catholic lady in Bengaluru, because she was born in one of the three districts in Karnataka, the Indian Succession Act in 1858 had been amended to disallow Catholic daughters from inheriting. And because her father loved her so much, father told her, why don't you go talk to Rajiv and see if we can get this amended, and we got it amended. So today, Catholic women...
but one thing there, we must give credit where it is due. The Law Minister then, Sadananda Gowda ji, said it in Parliament and the answer to his query.
Yes.
But then it was Siddaramaiah ji, the Congress government, which actually repealed the act.
Because it was the state law.
It is a state law. So credit goes where it is due, be it government or opposition. Final question, 1 minute on the clock.
All right, one more question over here. So my name is Barkat Rehan. I have a very short question for you. Since we were discussing UCC, sir, will UCC, you just now said the draft, nobody has seen the draft. But still, sir, you might be talking in the parliament about it. So I want to know, will UCC cover all genders? That is male, female and transgenders. Will all genders be on the same platform? Same law, one
Right.
one nation, one law?
Okay, ma'am.
First of all, I want to be very clear, and I said this in the response to Anand, despite his major efforts at baiting me on this, that there is no such thing. What the Prime Minister said in Bhopal was about why there was no UCC so far. So if you're asking me what is in the UCC, I certainly don't know, and I don't think anybody knows. This is to provoke a discussion about why for the last 65 years there has not been a UCC.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji, and from one Malayali to the other who's already in the house, Dr. Shashi Tharoor is also there. Good evening, sir. Thank you, sir. Big round of applause, please. Please be generous. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chandrasekhar. Thank you, Anand, for that engaging conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar. Now let us move forward to our next guest, a personality who embodies a unique blend of politics and wordsmithery. Dr. Shashi Tharoor, a Member of Parliament from the Indian National Congress, has not only authored numerous books, but has also made captivating speeches that showcase his idiosyncratic vocabulary and clipped English accent. It is also worth mentioning here that he has even coined the term pre-porn, officially recognized by the Oxford Dictionary. So needless to say, the man has his way with words, and one often wonders if the way his hair falls on his forehead is one of the reasons why women seem to swoon over him. Also, the fun fact is that since social media dominates our lives as we know it today, he is the very first Indian to cross 10,000 followers on Twitter back in the day. So it would be interesting to get him to spill some beans on how he scores an ace, even while he is in a predicament politicians often find themselves in, or Zook Zwan, as he would say, and still find his way. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Dr. Shashi Tharoor, and joining him on stage will be our managing editor, Mrs. Aka Jacob.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tharoor. It's always difficult as a TV anchor to be interviewing or moderating a discussion with somebody who's been described as a wordsmith. Is it true that pre-porn got attested to your name?
Actually, no. It's a nice thing to say. I briefly thought it might be. So I floated the query out in public, and I got a very helpful response from the Oxford English Dictionary, saying that though it had not been in common use, somebody in 1914 had used it in a letter in the New York Times or something, and somebody in 1950 had used it in a government document. So I can't claim, since both those dates were before I was born, I can't claim to have originated it. But I'm happy to put it back into circulation in India sometime in the 70s.
All right, so let's start with the G20 presidency. This is the year of India's G20 presidency. I believe that over 100 G20 meetings have happened in the course of the last 1 year during India's presidency. How do you see India seizing this moment? Is it a sort of an announcement that India has arrived on the world stage, much like, let's say, the Beijing Olympics was for China?
No, it's actually been quite remarkable because, to begin with, none of us expected this. The G20 chairmanship rotates, and it rotates every year. We might even have had it the previous year, but we swapped with Indonesia, so we got it this year. But what India did brilliantly, I think, was to, as you say, take it to the people, not just 100, I think it's more like 200 meetings, 58 cities, 32 work streams. So they suddenly made the G20 a kind of buzzword in India in a way that other countries that have hosted G20 meetings had failed to do. So full credit to India for seizing the opportunity, sort of pushing it as a kind of people's G20 by involving youth groups and civil society groups and think tanks. All of that's happened. And definitely it has, put India sort of on the consciousness of these 20 countries and their senior officials and ministers beyond any shadow of a doubt. And I think that's been quite remarkable. I think in many ways for India, it's one more sort of aspect of our soft power. You can take people to Hampi and to Srinagar and you showcase our diversity, you showcase so many aspects of our rich culture and so on. That helps. And to my mind, I've been a long advocate of soft power as India's strength, and I think this was one very good example of it.
Let's talk about hard power. I was there in the US when the Prime Minister visited a few weeks back. We had the recent visit to France, all the defense deals, the big tech deals. Do you see a sense in global capitals that they see India as the country to take a long bet on?
Oh yeah, I don't think that anyone feels they can afford to ignore India. That's out of the question. That's been evolving since the beginning of the century. And I would say that what's interesting is that it straddled both parties in our system and all governments in major countries. In other words, of course, Russia's only had Mr. Putin, but if you look at America, they've had Republican and Democratic presidents. We've had in France a series of different administrations. But right across, there's been the sense that India is a force to be reckoned with on the world stage, a country that must be taken seriously. And I think that the government has done well to work assiduously at it and take this up. I should preface this by saying that, to be honest, right from the days when I used to chair the Foreign Affairs Committee in Parliament, I took the line that there is no such thing as a BJP foreign policy or a Congress foreign policy. There's only India's foreign policy and India's national interests. And when it comes to our place in the world, we're all Indians, and I see it that way. So I want to stress to begin with that I'm not sort of suddenly turning out to be a lovey-dovey voice, but on foreign policy, I think by and large, and I used to be a critic at the beginning of the Modi administration of some of their failings, but I think they've really touched all the bases reasonably well. I mean, I remember the first year of Mr. Modi's prime ministership, he traveled to 27 countries, and not one of them was an Islamic country, and I made a bit of a fuss about that as a Congress MP and as a voice in the public space, and I'm delighted to say that what he's done subsequently in outreach to the Islamic world has been exemplary. In fact, it could not be bettered. We have outstanding relations with major Muslim countries, particularly in the Gulf, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and so on. And that's something which I think is to the credit of India and of the government. So I'm not going to take that. I'm happy to take back my earlier criticism.
Okay, but there are challenges therein as well, and the biggest seems to be China. What would the Congress have done differently with clearly a big power, a bigger economic power, a bigger military power that is hell-bent on changing the status quo, forcibly that too?
Sure, but there's something there, Zaka, that we part company. When it comes to national security, we're all one. And I don't think anyone would have any difference of view on that. What we were not happy about was the Prime Minister seemingly giving the Chinese a free pass by saying that they haven't taken any Indian territory, because our concern is there was basically an unspoken modus vivendi for the last almost half a century, going back to the last shot fired in anger on the border was in 1976. Thereafter, look, I claim my borders up to there, you claim your borders up to here, so you patrol here on Monday and I patrol there on Tuesday, and we keep it going. I'm only partially making light of it, but that was more or less the way it worked. There was no shot fired in anger, there were very few incidents of guns being pointed at each other. We had worked it out. What happened then after was that the Chinese came into this space and occupied it with enduring structures, took over places, essentially made patrolling we had been doing all the way up to April, May of 2020 impossible for our army. Now that's, whether it's technically Indian territory or still disputed territory that they've occupied, is a different issue. Our Prime Minister, we felt, should not have given the Chinese a free pass on that. That's one area on which the Congress was critical. A second concern we have is, there's a number of places that are not entirely comfortable right across the LAC. We've talked about Ladakh mainly because that's where the 20 Jawans were killed, but you go all the way up to Arunachal. Now what you're seeing is there are a number of points which we used to patrol which are no longer accessible to us. In Ladakh, there was this paper that came out that the government quickly disowned, which said by senior police officers in the area that 26 out of 65 patrolling points are no longer accessible to our folks. That's bad news. Now, I understand that our business community wants to import Chinese goods. Our manufacturers feel that China has a lot to offer us that we can't do without. But that on the one hand, we go around doing something frankly rather tokenistic like banning 58 Chinese apps, a slap on the wrist. And we don't do anything about the extraordinary dependence we have on China for imports, which continue to grow. The trade deficit between our two countries is over $90 billion in China's favor. And trade went as high as $139 billion last year. There's something about that that isn't right. Whether the government has failed to help businesses recalibrate their needs, whether simply they have not explored enough alternatives, or whether they basically accepted that they have no choice but to live with China, it doesn't send a particularly healthy signal. Foreign Minister Jaishankar has very clearly said we can't have normal relations until the status quo ante is restored on the border. But there's been absolutely no move by China to come back to what the status quo was before the tragic events of 2020. And since they're not going to do that, what is our posture? Why is it that the government won't discuss this in Parliament? Why won't they take the nation into confidence as to what our constraints are, what our vision is, how we hope to move forward? There are, frankly, 20 deaths that the government still is accountable for, and it needs to find some answers.
All right, let's talk a little bit domestic politics as well. All roads today seem to be leading to Bangalore. There's the big opposition meeting, unity meeting, and so on. To explain this to our viewers, imagine this is a hall of people who are your potential voters. Why would they vote for a ragtag bunch of about 20-odd parties with no declared face and whose unity very much is in question?
Well, first of all, no one's voting for all 20 parties. The point is precisely that they should come and find common ground, perhaps a common minimum program one day, and so on. But the idea would be that where some parties are particularly strong, theirs would be the face that's presented to the electors in their states, and in other states others would be, in order not to divide the vote. So the logic was excessively simple. Some analysts saying, well, BJP won a majority with 37% of the vote, the rest of us have 63, therefore with 63 we can defeat 37 and be united. But in our system it doesn't work that way, because each parliamentary seat is what you got to count. And from the BJP's 303, I believe there were only 48 seats which the two top opposition parties could have defeated the BJP in if they had not been dividing each other's votes. So that's only part of the answer. But the other part is that if we're going to put up a formidable fight, we need to actually have the capacity to put forward strong faces, and each strong face becomes undermined if within the opposition we're busy cutting them down. So that's the real argument. I mean, beyond that, I'm not in Bangalore, I wasn't in Patna, and I can't tell you what the discussions are. I do know that I heard from everyone who was at Patna that the atmosphere was fantastic, that there was a tremendous sense of a common cause, and of course, in Bangalore there'll even be a couple more parties who weren't there, and I'm certainly hoping that coming out of this, we'll have a clear sense of purpose and direction for the country.
Tell me this, Dr. Tharoor. I mean, Yeah, while in principle it sounds like a great idea, you have 543 constituencies, even if let's say in 300 of those you're able to find one joint opposition candidate to take on a BJP candidate. But practically, how will this work? Explain this to me, for example, in a state like yours. Are you going to have some kind of understanding with the left parties? It's always LDF versus
Unlikely.
UDF.
Unlikely because, of course, the history of the state is such that the rivalry between the CPM-led LDF and the Congress-led UDF is so fundamental, I mean, so almost existential, that you're not going to see any meeting of minds. But in Kerala, it's not that big a worry because the BJP is not a significant player. There are only about 3 constituencies, if I remember right, maybe 4, where they came second last time, and none where they were exceptionally close. So I think we'd have to recognize that it's a no-cost rivalry. And there's a great example of 2004 when the CPM drubbed the Congress. In fact, they won almost all the seats in Kerala and Congress came out as 0 MPs. But when they showed up in Delhi, they supported the formation of the UPA-1 government from the outside, but still that was there. So I think that you have to understand that there is a difference, both for the political parties and for the voters, between state rivalries and national. So at the state level, you will have people saying our old rivalries remain, and at the national level you'll cooperate. But there may be some states where they can overcome those distinctions.
So I'll get one question in before we open it up to the audience, and I'm sure there are a lot of audience members who are keen and eager to ask you questions. Just in terms of, what's happened in this whole project opposition unity, just what's happened in Maharashtra over the last few weeks, that is a body blow, wouldn't you say? That in Maharashtra you had this 3-party alliance, you lost power, and now both of those parties, 2 out of those 3 parties, there's a vertical split.
Yes, but I suspect it's going to be rather short-lived in terms of its impact, because ultimately the voters will be the ones deciding. And I suspect that a fair amount of voters have been turned off by the blatant cynicism involved in these exercises. We saw a similar change in Karnataka, where essentially an election which, frankly, the other side had lost was turned around through Operation Lotus, which often is a code name for naked money power. And a government was formed by the BJP. It was then rejected by the voters at the first opportunity. It could happen the same way in Maharashtra. And obviously, none of us can predict, but my argument would be that I don't think people can afford to be too complacent. In the short term, you can buy people and form a government. In the long term, you can't buy millions of voters, so we'll have to see what the voters decide.
All right. Let's open this up to our guests. My colleague Sharon is there with the mic. So I see the lady there in the...
Yes. So a lot of women requests are coming. So I will start with...
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Who is the leader of the opposition? Who's the face?
Well, each party has its own leader.
I'm talking about Congress.
Oh, in the Congress, as you know, the president of the party is Mr. Kharge, and sort of the, what shall we say, the sort of leading figure in the party is Rahul Gandhi. Of that, there's very little doubt. The chairperson of the Parliamentary Alliance is Sonia Gandhi. All that exists. But if you mean this from the point of view of what face would be presented to the nation in the election of 24, I think the short answer that I'm inclined to give right now is, first of all, that hasn't been decided. The parties will have to get together and decide if they wish to put forward one face or not. My guesswork is not, because one of the great slogans the Congress party came up with in the 2014 election was about the simple message, "Main nahi, hum." And we've seen for 10 years a politics of main.
Crime along with his other family members. Now, what we have been told by our sources in the Enforcement Directorate is that either the mines, the red sand mines, have gone to his son or to his son-in-law or to a benami, and that is why this case is under investigation.
Tamil Nadu, where weeks after the arrest of Tamil Nadu Minister Sendil Balaji in connection with money laundering case, now Tamil Nadu Higher Education Minister K. Ponmuri is under the ED scanner. Now, Enforcement Directorate conducted raids at multiple properties of Ponmuri and his son. Now, according to the ED sources, the case is related to illegal allotment of mines when Ponmuri was the mines minister. Total 5 mines were allocated when he occupied the position of Mines Minister, and according to ED sources, all 5 mines were allocated to either of his close relatives. Now, Tamil Nadu Higher Education Minister K. Ponmudi is the second DMK leader in 1 month to have come under the ED scanner. Remember, earlier Tamil Nadu Minister V. Senthil Balaji was arrested by the ED following raids at his residence. So, after Senthil Balaji was arrested in connection with money laundering case, now Tamil Nadu Higher Education Minister K. Ponmudi is under the ED scanner. We have CNN News 18's Ashish Mehrishi joining us on the story. Ashish, could you tell us more about what is this case about and what all has been recovered so far in the raids?
So, it's very early to comment on what has been recovered till now, but we can certainly say on why he has been raided by the Enforcement Directorate and why his son is basically also under a scanner. Reason being that there was basically a case, if you remember, in the previous DMK government, K. Ponmudi was basically occupying the position of Minister of Mines and Minerals and Higher Education. This was in the previous DMK government. Now, interestingly, at that point in time, K. Ponmudi allocated around 5 mines during his tenure. This was basically related to red sand quarrying. And this was basically, interestingly, it was found that out of those 5 mines, all of them, in fact, not even one was allocated to somebody else, but 5 of them were allocated either to his son or his close relatives. What we've been told is a few mines have also been allocated to his son-in-law, and 1 mine was related to his benami. So that is that time where that is the reason why K. Ponmudi basically came under the investigation of the state government. And then further, when the FIR was registered, this FIR was taken over by the Enforcement Directorate and a fresh CCIR was registered. Now, what we have been told is that it is not only that, that K. Ponmudi is basically under investigation. His son, Gautam Segamani, is basically also under investigation. Reason being, 1, he's a member of parliament, and 2, he is one of the beneficiary of proceeds of crime. So this is certainly an eye-opener because K. Ponmudi's son, Gautam Segamani, is basically also under investigation by the Enforcement Directorate. As my sources tell me that the family could be beneficiary of more than beneficiary of proceeds of crime of more than 50 crore rupees, and that is why these raids are being conducted. So let's see how things move forward. What has been found during the searches, we could tell it only during the day because the searches are still under progress.
So Ashish, what can be expected next in this case now?
So since there is ample evidence against him, because this is a clear-cut case of corruption which falls under the scheduled offence of Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Like the previous minister, if you remember, Senthil Balaji was basically raided, and further, there was an arrest warrant against him by the Enforcement Directorate. Here again, there is a bright chance the Enforcement Directorate can take a decision to arrest him because he already has, the Enforcement Directorate already has ample evidence against him. Let's see how things move forward during the day. But there is a bright chance that the Enforcement Directorate can, by the end of the day or by tomorrow morning decide whether he could be arrested or not.
So Ashish, Ponmudi is the second DMK leader who is under the ED scanner in last 1 month. Earlier it was Senthil Balaji, now Ponmudi. But all this also comes amid the allegations that the opposition has been making time and again that the central agencies are being misused by the centre.
Yes, there is no doubt about it. But, I've always been saying that these cases stand in the court of law on their own legs. Nobody can fabricate evidence. The court, the Indian judicial system is very robust, and if any arrest has to happen or these cases have to stand in the court of law, the Enforcement Directorate or any other agency for that matter, they have to give ample evidence in the court of law. My sources in the Enforcement Directorate tell me there is ample evidence against K. Ponmudi related to this scam, which is basically related to red sand mining and a scam, which is where the mines were allocated to his relatives. So, and especially his son, who's a sitting member of parliament. So, these are certain details which are coming out, but too early to comment on whether he will be arrested or not or what has been found. But my sources in the Enforcement Directorate tell me that there is ample evidence against K. Ponmudi and his son.
All right, Ashish, please stay with us. We also have our correspondent Purnima Murli joining us on the broadcast. Purnima, can you give us the latest updates about the raids that are being conducted at Ponmuri's residence?
And some sources is that the raids are currently underway at the official residence of Higher Education Minister Ponmudi in Chennai as well as in Virupuram district.
Voted for the BJP 10 years ago expecting they'd get jobs in a booming economy, and they still don't have a job, we'll tell them, why do you want to vote for these guys again merely because you like somebody's face? You can see, I think, a basis for a constructive opposition that is not necessarily personality-centered.
All right, and finally, since you're a cricket buff, we have to ask you a cricket question.
Okay.
Given our travails both in the Indian team, both in Test cricket and in T20, what hopes do you have for the upcoming one-day World Cup, which incidentally is...
First of all, we don't really have travails, man. We came two successive finals of the World Test Championship.
But we lost.
We lost, fair enough. But we're right now sort of showing our utter dominance over the West Indies this week and next. I do feel that we shouldn't exaggerate how badly we're doing. But on the ODI World Cup in India, the last time it was held in India, we won the tournament. So I'm certainly hoping that we'll be able to manage a repeat.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks
Dr. Shashi Tharoor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tharoor and Zaka, for that very engaging conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for Dr. Shashi Tharoor. I hope you are enjoying the sessions that we have for you this evening on CNN News 18 Town Hall. And hope you're also putting everything out on social media. It's very important for the engagement to be building in. The hashtag that we are using is CNN News 18 Town Hall. So please continue to tweet, put it out on your social media handles so that we get enough and ample traction that is required. Now remember, this is just the first leg of the Town Hall edition that has started from the national capital here in Delhi as far as this year, 2023, is concerned. And in the run-up to the general elections in 2024, we are going to be having more such town halls. So we are going to be traveling to different cities across the country. It is going to be a roving edition of the Town Hall. So let's wait and see where do we go to next. So all excited to actually bring to you more and more such important conversations on this very platform that is the CNN News 18 Town Hall. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now move forward to our next panel discussion, which brings together two distinguished individuals from different political spectrums, both firebrand speakers. So please welcome Mr. Sudhanshu Trivedi, a Member of Parliament from the Bharatiya Janata Party, and Mr. Manish Tiwari, a Member of Parliament from the Congress Party and also former Union Minister. And moderating this session will be our Managing Editor, Mr. Zaka Jacob.
Thank you very much, Sudhanshu Trivedi ji, Manish Tiwari ji. Thank you very much for joining us on the CNN News 18 Town Hall. The topic is Road to 2024, and we couldn't have thought of a better time because today all roads seem to be going to either the Town Hall or to Bangalore. 26 opposition parties, Dr. Trivedi, are in Bangalore today and tomorrow. They are saying numerically, arithmetically, वो बीजेपी से बड़ा है और ज़्यादा है. इसको आप कैसे टेक ऑन करेंगे? Arithmetically, तो numbers तो ज़्यादातर तो opposition के पास ही है.
Those who are going to Bengaluru, this is not happening for the first time. If you remember, in 2018, the same scenario was there. Rather than much bigger scenario was there.
You can take this. You can take this.
whatever is happening in Bengaluru, it is not happening for the first time. If you remember, just before the previous election in 2018, the same scenario was there. Rather than a much bigger scenario was there. So many leaders were there, if you remember, joining hands and giving a big rally. And Bengaluru is known for aerospace industry. So their plane took off, but it landed nowhere. And finally what happened is dil ke tukde hazar hue, koi yahan gira, koi wahan gira. So finally, I just want to say, when they are doing in Bengaluru, it's having a much more significance. Because Bangalore is considered to be the intellectual capital of India. And those younger generation, the millennium generation, who are intelligent enough to understand that who is going to lead the country on which road. Prime Minister has given a very clear, crystal clear view for the next 25 years. The Amrit Kal, that how we want to make India number one economy of the world with our heritage, pride of our heritage, strong and robust national security. On the other hand, I would just like to say, previously they met in Patna on 23rd of June. On the same day, 23rd of June, Prime Minister was there in America. And Prime Minister was busy in ensuring various defense deals, whether it was GE engines to be manufactured here for the fighter planes, or semiconductors, or Predator drones. So he was there to have the defense deal to uphold the security of the country, and there was also a defense deal in Patna going on. That was defense deal of whom? To cover up the corruptions of one another, to defend the corruptions of one another. And you remember who was there? वहाँ पे थे कोयला घोटाले वाले भी थे, 2G वाले भी थे, शराब घोटाले वाले भी थे, भर्ती घोटाले वाली बुआ जी भी थी, और the chairmanship was of the चारा घोटाला. And so that was another defense deal, to defend their corruption and defend their family. But उनकी जो strength है वो उतनी ही मजबूत थी जितनी वो पुल की थी बिहार के जो गिर गया, और अब तो उनका मांझी भी छोड़ के चला गया. So I think the fate of their path is very much visible in contrast to the path shown by Prime Minister Shri Modi.
So Manish Tiwari, for the voters of India, the BJP, it's very clear. You have one leader in Mr. Modi, their policies are very clear. What is it that the opposition is offering? Let's start with the question of leadership. Who is the leader of this bunch of 26 parties that have come together in Bengaluru, and what do these parties stand for?
The essence of any democracy is change. Change itself brings about a renewal, regeneration and rejuvenation of the democratic experiment per se. So therefore, the first principle of any functional democracy is that it should be amenable to a regular change of government. It keeps the lifeblood of democracy pulsating through the veins of the republic. Number two, when you talk about alliances, we are talking about an alliance meeting which is taking place in Bengaluru. There's another alliance meeting which is taking place in Delhi. Right? So therefore, there are 30 odd parties which are coming together under the NDA rubric in New Delhi tomorrow. Yeah. So therefore, there is a juxtaposition of two contrasting alliances. And if the BJP would have been all that comfortable as they claim to be, there wouldn't have been this panic, and panic almost bordering on paranoia, in order to try and create or recreate the National Democratic Alliance, for which they have not cared over the past 9 years. So, to answer your question, the opposition which is coming together is doing so in order to offer a principled democratic alternative to this country. I do not want to get into the hyperbole of what my dear friend Mr. Sudhanshu Trivedi just articulated. Suffice to say that over the past 9 years, all the charges that they hurled at the erstwhile UPA, how many convictions have been there? He talked about 2G. Has there been a single conviction in 2G? He talked about various other things. You see, it is very, very easy to level allegations. It's extremely easy to go ahead and register FIRs against people because in this country, the process is the punishment. But ultimately, does all that vendetta, does all that persecution really stand in a court of law? And the answer is very self-evident. In the past 9 years, because it was all built on a castle of sand, it has not stood in a court of law. So essentially, the opposition has come together to offer an alternative. There would be a common minimum program. There would be a leadership which would manifest itself. And you would see as we go towards 2024, or as we travel on the road to 2024, a lot of questions that you are asking would self-evidently crystallize.
So, Sudhanshu ji, just one example. Manish Tiwari just said that, what is the desperation to revive the NDA? Kal ko NDA ka meeting hoga yahan pe. Let me just give the example of jo Maharashtra mein hua. What was the need to take on Ajit Pawar on board till the other day, till a few weeks ago? You were accusing Ajit Pawar of corruption. Wo jo video tha, chakki piecing wala, wo to viral bhi ho gaya. Is the BJP becoming whatever it is accusing the Congress of having become?
Whatever has happened in Maharashtra, this was a solely internal matter of the NCP. And the same thing happened in Shiv Sena. The problem is, as my dear friend Mr. Manish Tiwari was saying, he was asking about the democracy in all those parties. They claim that they are the champions of democracy, but unfortunately they are those parties who represent dynasty in their own party. No, not even an iota of democracy. It is to be decided firmly right from birth that this person will lead the party. And then they become the champions of democracy. So the problem is, हमारे यहाँ पार्टी को परिवार समझते हैं और वो परिवार को पार्टी समझ लेते हैं, and here starts the problem. And that's how Shiv Sena entered into the problem. That's how NCP entered into the problem. So it is their solely internal matter. And as far as the others are concerned, I would like to quote that the first coalition government which completed its full term was led by BJP during Atal Bihari Vajpayee's tenure. So we have created a paradigm shift in the Indian politics. Before that, none of the coalition government, neither in the state nor at center, was able to complete the term. And the first government, other than Congress, who got a clear majority on its own, it was in 2014 and again in 2019 by Shri Narendra Modi. So again we have created a paradigm shift. Another paradigm shift was, despite getting a clear majority, both the time on its own, we have taken all the allies with us with a proper respect. No, and we have not left anybody. They have left. And whosoever has left us, you can see.
The reason why people are asking this question is, yes, Mr. Modi got an unprecedented mandate 2014 May, then 2019 May. If you're so confident about 2024, तो फिर अकाली दल के साथ क्यों चर्चा हो रही है? I think TDP के साथ भी चर्चा हो रही है. Are all these parties going to come back to NDA? Doesn't this show that आप numbers पे confident नहीं है?
देखिए, एक बात बहुत क्लियर है, जब मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में भारत बहुत क्लैरिटी के साथ आगे बढ़ता हुआ दिख रहा है, तो बहुत से लोगों को लगता है कि नाउ दिस इज द वे वेयर इंडिया इज डेस्टिन्ड टू बी. एंड दैट्स हाउ मोदी जी हैज क्रिएटेड अ सिचुएशन इन विच फॉर द 3 consecutive years he has been rated the number 1 leader in all over the world. I just want to say one example. Can you quote a single country in the world in which today Russia says that India is our traditional ally and US says that India is our strategic ally? It has happened only under the leadership of Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. Can you quote a single instance in which during the Yemen war, the both warring factions agreed to stop the fighting for 2 hours for which the Indian planes can go? So from international level, and can you quote a single instance in the entire history of the country when 48 crore people have got Jan Dhan account? Another example I would like to give, 4 crore people have got Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Out of 4 crore, in 3 crore, women are having the joint ownership of the party and the joint ownership of the property. And in most of the cases, they are only belong to the poor classes. I can say with challenge कि इससे पहले कभी 3 करोड़ गरीब औरतों के हाथ में मालिकाना हक नहीं होगा कि कागज पर रजिस्ट्री उनका नाम हो. This is the change which has been brought.
So Manish Tiwari, let's talk about, it's the year of India's G20 presidency. We've had over 100 plus meetings that India has chaired as part of the chairmanship. You've just seen the kind of reception that the Prime Minister received first in America, then in France, at a time when India's stock itself seems to be going up and up in the world. And credit where credit is due, some of it goes to Mr. Modi's leadership. What is the opposition offering in terms of an alternative? What is it that the people of India, you're offering to them as an alternative?
Let me answer Mr. Trivedi and the questions that you've asked in a chronological order. Sudhanshuji recounted some of the successes of the so-called coalition arrangements they've been a part of. Let me recount some of the failures. It starts with the SVD alliance in 1967, the failed Janata experiment in 1977, the failed National Front experiment in 1989, and of course the failed experiment of 1996 and 1998. And in fact, at a point in time when there used to be ideology in Indian politics, in fact, the BJP or its earlier avatar, the Jan Sangh, surmounted that very skillfully to even align with the communists in their quest for anti-Congressism. So therefore, while he may have recounted some successes of coalition, those successes came after a long string of failures. So therefore, that is just setting the historical record straight. Number two, insofar as natural ally and strategic ally is concerned, I think we broke that paradigm way back in 1989 itself. The fact remains that when the global reset was initiated by the then Congress government in 1991, after the collapse of Eastern Europe and the erstwhile Soviet Union, we were able to very skillfully actually reach out and reset a relationship with the United States of America while maintaining the traditional relationship with Russia, not only alive, but actually we rejuvenated it periodically over a period of time. The difficulty with the BJP is that it feels that history started on the 23rd of May 2014, but actually history started a long time back, because the fact is that most of these things, especially when you talk about statecraft or diplomacy, they are a continuum in themselves. And you've had governments, which have continuously built on it. You talked about the US relationship. Now, the reset with the US was actually initiated by Mr. Jaswant Singh under Mr. Vajpayee's government when he had that dialogue with Strobe Talbot. The NSSP was done by the then NDA BJP government. Dr. Manmohan Singh's government, picked up the ball, and you had the Indo-US civil nuclear deal, a paradigm that you've not been able to reach ever since then. And so therefore, in certain areas, governments, rise above partisan differences and ensure that national interest is kept on a premium, it is kept on a priority. So therefore, to try and nitpick and score brownie points in areas where every government has contributed, I do not think is a very fair way of approaching something as serious as national security, diplomacy and statecraft. To finally conclude and answer your question, as I was earlier pointing out, the opposition is going to offer an alternative vision for both the development of India, which promotes equity, which reduces the gross income inequality, which has become the swan song of the NDA BJP years over the past 9 years. What you have seen is actually a concentration of wealth in a very few hands, with a lot of people either being put on dole or not having opportunities to be even able to keep their body and soul together. So therefore, the fundamental principle where democracy thrives is when you have income equality. And income equality, to ensure that the fruits of economic development reach the last person in the last row, would be one of the priorities. And as we go forth, you will find a whole alternative program of development, a whole alternative vision for this country being articulated and put before the country.
Okay. Sudhanshuji, for the BJP, historically, the three biggest issues were Ram Mandir, Article 370 abrogation, and of course UCC, the Uniform Civil Code. UCC की बात काफी चर्चा हो रही है आजकल, but ना कोई draft है, ना कोई basis है, and how many people will you exempt? You'll exempt the tribals, you'll exempt the Northeast. तो क्या है UCC को लेकर आपका क्या है? What is your vision? What are the details? What are the modalities?
First, I would like to answer just in brief what he has said. He said that in 1991, when the Eastern Bloc has crippled, and then at the time, Government of India has changed. I would just like to remind two instances. They were saying that they were having equally good relation with the Russia and America. 1994, Russia backtracked, giving us the third stage cryogenic engine. ये नबी नारायण वाली मूवी उसी context में थी. In 1995, Narasimha Rao government was all set to perform the nuclear test, and it was America who stopped. So this was our equal relationship with Russia and America. And today, we are getting S-400 from Russia, and first outside NATO country to all set to get Predator drones. So that is how we have dealt equivalent balance with them, and that's how. And one more thing, I will agree to him. So previous governments have also done several very good steps, like the present transition of the economy was done by Narasimha Rao government, shedding away the Nehruvian economy. But unfortunately, those who have done significant work, whether it was Sri Lal Bahadur Shastri, who started the nuclear program, and Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao, who has transformed the economy, were not given due legitimate dignity which was to be given to them. Now coming on these three issues. ये तो आपने बहुत अच्छी बात कह दी. These three issues were in our agenda since our previous avatar, Jansangh 1951. And you cannot quote a single manifesto of Bharatiya Janata Party in which all these three things are not there. So ये इस बात का प्रमाण है कि we have never changed our stand on our basic point, and with due humility I would like to ask, quote a single political party. हमने 72 साल में कोई स्टैंड चेंज नहीं किया. आप बताइए कोई पार्टी जिसने 72 साल में 4 बार अपना स्टैंड न चेंज किया हो on the core issues, like on the issue of Ram Temple. If you remember, it was Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao as Prime Minister had said हम बाबरी मस्जिद दोबारा तामील करेंगे. And Mulayam Singh Yadav as Chief Minister said Babri Masjid dobara tamil karenge. Now they said, no, we welcome, everybody accept that the Ram Mandir should be there. So this is the change. But we were standing against the odds, and we are standing here also. We said 370 will be abrogated. We have done it. If you look after 2019, when we got certain strength in Rajya Sabha, whether it was triple talaq, halala, Hajj subsidy, several things have happened. We tried to make India a truly secular country with an equal opportunity to everybody. On the lighter note, मैं कहना चाहूँगा, after the demolition of the disputed structure in 1993 elections of 4 states, we were unable to form the government in Uttar Pradesh. SP, BSP, Congress together managed to form the government, though we were the biggest party. तो उस समय एक नारा लगा था, मिले मुलायम काशी राम, हवा में उड़ गए जय श्री राम. तो at the time, one of our leader has said कि this is been slogan is being raised because your unity and strength, you were not able to portray your full strength and unity. The day you will portray the full strength and unity, उस दिन जो कहते हैं कि मिले मुलायम काशी राम, हवा में उड़ गए जय श्री राम, उस दिन नारा हो जाएगा क्या मुलायम क्या काशी राम, सारे बोलेंगे जय श्री राम. और आज आप देखिए, you name a single political party which is opposing Ram Temple, and just 30 years back, you name a single political party other than BJP who are supporting Ram Temple. So that's how the history is created. हम वो नहीं है जो हवा के साथ बहते हैं. वो मोदी जी के लिए कहना चाहूंगा, अंगार हार उनका जिनकी सुनहाक समय रुक जाता है, आदेश जिधर कर देते हैं इतिहास उधर मुड़ जाता है.
Manish Tiwari, on UCC, you've tweeted about this as well. What is the case for not having a common set of laws for civil matters like marriage, divorce, adoption, etc., for all Indians irrespective of their religion?
You see, the difficulty with the BJP is that it pays lip service to the Uniform Civil Code. It does not understand what a Uniform Civil Code means. If you read Article 44 of the Constitution, it talks about a uniform civil code. It doesn't talk about a common civil code. There is a fundamental distinction between a uniform civil code and a common civil code. When Dr. Ambedkar, if you go back to the Constituent Assembly debates, introduced Article 44, which is a non-binding directive principle of state policy, the wording that was used was that the state shall endeavor to have a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. What does that mean? It means that there will be certain egalitarian principles which will underpin every personal law with regard to inheritance, with regard to gender equity, with regard to succession, with regard to property rights. And in fact, it was the UPA government between 2004 and 14, which really brought about progressive legislation which ensured gender equity, especially with regard to inheritance laws. And so therefore, if the BJP was so very clear about what Uniform Civil Code means, they won't be going around saying that we'll exempt the tribals, we'll exempt the Christians, right? So if you're going to exempt the tribals, you're going to exempt the Christians, why will you not exempt the Muslims? Why will you not exempt the Sikhs? Do you think the Sikh community is going to accept that the Anand Marriage Act, which they fought for, and we had amendment in 2012, that is going to be abrogated and replaced by a common law? And in any case, you have a voluntary Uniform Civil Code in this country. And that voluntary Uniform Civil Code is the Special Marriages Act 1954, read along with the Indian Succession Act. So it is not as if India does not have a Uniform Civil Code. That is a voluntary opt-in. Unfortunately for them, a Uniform Civil Code is really a dog whistle. I can elaborate on that, but we are running out of time. And two more things which I would like to say. The story with regard to Article 370 is not over. Since I'm counsel in that matter and the Supreme Court is going to start hearing it from the 2nd of August on a daily basis, till the time the court does not adjudicate on the constitutionality of it, the story with regard to the illegal abrogation of 370 and for the first time in the constitutional history of India, turning a state into 2 union territories, that story is not over. What happened on 5th and 6th of August 2019 in both houses of parliament was a constitutional travesty which is being adjudicated. And on Ram Mandir, let me finally say, Dr. Trivedi talked about changing stances. Our stance has been very clear from day one. We said that the matter will be adjudicated by the highest court and whatever the court decides will be acceptable. And that's exactly what we have done. So therefore, it's very easy to really make these hyperbole allegations of trying to run with the hare and hunt with the hound without really getting into the nitty-gritty of it. I would really commend to the BJP that they should revisit what exactly do they mean when they talk about a Uniform Civil Code.
Okay, we have 4 minutes.
Can I
quickly, sir? Yeah.
Quickly. I just quoting his leaders. Jawaharlal Nehru in 1956 giving an interview to a Hungarian journalist, Timur Monde. He is written in his book, Nehru's View, India and Others. He talks about common civil code. And then Nehru said confidently, I have decided for Hindus, now they cannot have 2 marriages, succession and others. Then he asked, what about the Muslims? The word of, I cannot dare to think about that. It is the word I cannot dare. Then he asks, why? Because I want that they should remain with their religious beliefs and others. Then he says, if the Turkey can do, why can't you? He said, no, that's a Muslim country, but we are a Hindu majority country. We do not want to touch. It is Nehru. And now during the Rajiv Gandhi time, when Shabano case came, Arif Sahab himself has told it that one of the cabinet minister of Rajiv Gandhi government has asked him, why you are opposing Shabano case? Then he told, because I am thinking that this is taking Muslims backward. So he was saying that the cabinet minister of Rajiv Gandhi government said, Muslim gutter mein pade rehna chahte hain, to unhe pade rehne do, tum kyun unki chakkar mein pad rahe ho. And that's how I would just put a data in 1931 census. The rate of literacy of India was 8 to 10%. In Uttar Pradesh, the most literate community of the Hindus, it was a caste-based census. Brahmins were having 15% and Sayyid Muslims 24% rate of literacy. But in 67 years, they have come down to the stage of Sachar Commission and this. इसीलिए कहते हैं ना, किसी को किसी की मोहब्बत ने मारा, किसी को किसी की अदावत ने मारा, शराफत अली को सेकुलर सियासत ने मारा.
Manish.
Well, I have nothing to say. He's just validated the charge of a dog whistle. If the BJP is so confident about a uniform civil code, let them come with a draft of a uniform civil code. You see, ultimately, when you talk about a uniform civil code, are you going to do away with the entire concept of an HUF, the Hindu undivided family, right? Or are you then going to allow a Muslim undivided family, a Christian undivided family, a Jain undivided family, as taxing mechanisms in your tax laws? Are you then going to ensure that the exceptions which have been built into the Hindu Marriage Act itself to allow for certain customary marriages to take place, which do not invalidate the marriage or the whole concept of spinda marriages, are you going to do away with that? So therefore, it's very easy to do this dog whistling. I challenge the BJP to come up with a draft of a uniform civil code, which is actually uniform in character. If they could have conceptualized a draft, their leaders would not be going and saying that we are exempting the tribals, we are exempting the Christians, we are exempting X and Y. The simple reason for that is that they also know it is not possible to have a uniform civil code, and that's what I'm saying, that it's a dog whistle. And what Mr. Trivedi unfortunately said, or Dr. Trivedi said, actually validated that dog whistle.
All right, one final word. I have less than 1 minute left, so 30 seconds each. In one sentence, why should India vote for Mr. Modi and for the NDA? And to Manish Tiwari, why should India vote for the Congress party or the opposition? Sudhanshu Trivedi first. In one sentence.
स्वप्न देखा था कभी वो आज हर धड़कन में है, एक नया भारत बनाने का इरादा मन में है और बढ़ रहे हैं हम प्रगति की ओर उस रफ्तार से, कर रहा है विश्व भी हमको नमन उस पार से.
Manish Tiwari, in one sentence.
In one sentence, very simply, for democracy to survive, change is important. Change is the essence and the lifeblood of democracy, and that's why in 2024, a change is important. It is imperative, it is necessary, and it will happen.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Sudhanshu Trivedi and Manish Tiwari, please put your hands together for these two gentlemen from the BJP and the Congress.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tiwari and Mr. Trivedi, for joining us on the this evening, and thank you, Zaka, for that very engaging conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for the two gentlemen, as we've had a very insightful and an engaging panel over there. But things will continue to get heated up over here as you see the addition of chairs that are happening. As far as this particular stage is concerned, the panel is expanding. So moving ahead, we have that very exciting panel with 4 dynamic personalities who play vital roles in the political landscape. Please welcome Padma Vibhushan awardee and a member of the Rajya Sabha, Ms. Sonal Mansingh, Ms. Shushmita Dev, a member of parliament from the Trinamool Congress, Mr. GVL Narasimha Rao, Member of Parliament from the Bharatiya Janata Party, and Mr. Ritesh Pandey, Lok Sabha MP from the BSP. And moderating this session will be our esteemed anchor, Ms. Shivani Gupta.
Thank you, everyone.
everyone for being here, and a big round of applause, please. We have 4 parliamentarians on our stage, and of course, it will be my pleasure to pick their brains about parliamentary democracy ahead of the next general elections, because that's the word that is continuing to be debated in India, parliamentary democracy, and is it being strengthened or is it losing its sheen? So I have 4 esteemed parliamentarians on the stage. Can I begin with a big round of applause so that we know everybody is alive and kicking? Yes, thank you so much. Let me begin with Sonal Mansingh ji, who's here. Thank you, ma'am, for your time. I want to understand from you, one of the big criticisms of Parliament proceedings, or what goes on in Parliament these days, maybe more these days than earlier, in both houses, is that there is less discussion and debate, there is more disruption and sometimes even unruly behavior. I want to begin by you, because you're an artist who stepped into the arena of the Parliament. Are parliamentarians truly living up to their duty to the public? What do you think?
देखिए, मैं आर्टिस्ट हूँ, and I'm used to discipline. I'm used to lakdi on my elbows and knees.
Yes.
Fortunately, that's not the procedure to be followed in Parliament, in Rajya Sabha. But I do think that quite often it has been going a little beyond expectation, and it's unfortunate that so many important bills and resolutions and everything does not get passed due to lack of quorum or walkouts, disruptions, noise. So that is lamentable.
Okay. GVL, let me begin with you as well. They say that the responsibility to run the House smoothly lies on the Treasury benches, lies on the government. Has the government failed in that job, given how many disruptions take place and the number of MPs from the opposition especially who've been suspended in the last 4 years has tripled in a similar period before that? Does that not show that maybe there's less debate and discussion being encouraged and more action on opposition?
Good evening to you and all the viewers. It actually shows how the unruly behavior of the opposition how it has made it impossible for the House to function, for both the Houses of Parliament to function. Before every session of Parliament, Honorable Prime Minister appealed to all political parties that we are willing, Parliament is for discussion, debate, and not for disruption. We have seen very, very unfortunate and very ugly scenes in Parliament the last session, when Honorable Prime Minister was replying to the motion of Honorable President's address to Parliament, both houses of Parliament. This is considered a very important speech in Parliament. Prime Minister was disrupted in Rajya Sabha throughout his speech. No one allowed the Prime Minister to be heard. This is an insult not just to the Honorable Prime Minister, it's insult to the President of India, the first citizen of India. It's an insult to India's democracy. Never before a Prime Minister was not allowed to speak in the manner he was disrupted in this session. So I think things have gone too far. And every session, opposition says, oh, this is the only issue that we want to debate. And when chairman of the House does not allow discussion, or the Lok Sabha speaker does not allow discussion because certain rules are not being followed, everyone has to actually heed to the chair. They believe the best way to get headlines in television channels is to create disruption in Parliament. And I have a feeling that opposition has stopped having any appetite for speaking for the public. They simply want to create disruption, walk out, and rest of the day everybody is free. So we are doing a great disservice to the people of this country who have elected so many members of Parliament. We are failing in our duty by not allowing houses to function.
No, so you're echoing what Sonal Mansingh ji is saying, but does some of the blame not lie with the government? Because you ask this of the opposition, they remind you of Arun Jaitley's famous quote that disruption is a legitimate means of opposition in Parliament.
Yeah, disruption also has to have some order. It cannot be a disorderly disruption. You can't jump onto the chairman's desk and tear papers, tear off the mic,
and you can't throw books at the Secretary General and officers of Parliament, and that's not kind of disruption. Obviously, there is a legitimate and a method to madness. I'm sorry to use that word, but that's, I think, perhaps the most appropriate word to use. There has to be, even if there is dissent, it has to follow certain democratic form. And here it's complete lawlessness. And this is really unfortunate, and it really pains people like me. And it should pain many other young parliamentarians, like our friends here on both my side. I think it robs us of opportunities to really speak for the people. I'm saying that. I have included myself.
So Shweta ji, let me come to you. The converse question to that is that if you talk about the TMC, for example, the party that you belong to, virtually all of their Rajya Sabha MPs have faced suspension for unruly behavior. And some of it has been about, fighting with the marshal. Some of it has been about throwing things at the speaker's chair. Now, is that the means of disruption that opposition parties want to be known for?
Thanks, Shivani. I'm not going to give a very long rhetorical answer, but what I'll tell you is, when the mechanisms within the system fail, that's when the opposition feels compelled to take another route. You see, we have the dilemma that when we don't protest, for instance, let's say inflation is at its highest. I'm giving a small example. So in the next parliament session, if I start accepting the government's proposal to debate on how sports should be promoted, and that's what the government invariably does, a member of parliament of the BJP will move some absolutely banal topic, and the speaker will accept it and say, "Ab sports pe charcha kijiye," jabki mehengai is the biggest issue outside the parliament. This is the way Parliament is frustrated, and I don't expect every person to understand that. And let me end it by saying that when the farm laws were brought, the 3 farm laws, there was havoc in Parliament. That's when you just said that members of the Trinamool Congress were suspended and many others were suspended. All that the television channels showed is, look, what's happening. Public money is going to waste. But eventually what happened? This government and the Prime Minister of India had to accede that those laws are not acceptable to the people. The mood inside the parliament, via the opposition, has to reflect the mood of the nation. And what is a healthy democracy? A healthy democracy is when the government of the day should not fear criticism. Government of the day should be able to listen to a debate which cuts into the government's policy and criticizes the government's policy. And I'll end by saying that when the China war happened,
the Galwan clash.
Yes. No, I'm talking about Pandit Nehru's time. There's a famous story when BJP had no strength, hardly any strength in parliament, but Bajpayee ji wanted the session to be convened so that it could be debated, and Pandit Nehru acceded to that and sat through the entire debate where the entire opposition criticized him, because he knew that that was the mood of the nation. So that's how a democracy is run. So I just want to reiterate the fact, that sometimes we have no choice, otherwise we just become pawns inside parliament.
I get your point about being frustrated, but my question was that the behavior even in opposition or in contest of what the government is doing. Let's say you accept that what the government has done is wrong. You should be given your space to raise the issues you feel are the most important. GVLG raised one issue that you can't insist on one issue. Everything will come one by one. The second is the manner in which you register your protest. Is picking up mics, throwing things, can that be avoided?
See, I just want to tell you that there is a rule in parliament. When the house is not in order, that means there is noise or there is protest, generally a house is adjourned. The speaker calls all sides, which includes the people in power, the people in the opposition, and tries to come to a consensus to say, okay, let's debate what the government is saying and then we will debate yours the next day. There is absolutely no backroom efforts that this government makes, which has been the norm for decades. Let me finish, GVL. I didn't interrupt you. So all I'm saying is,
Yes, Sushmita, please finish. Yes.
So what I'm saying is, that is the reality which people who watch television can't see.
Okay. You're saying the government needs to do more. Sonalji, you want to come in very quickly before I go to the
I just wanted to make a quick intervention saying that I somehow disagree with Sushmita ji, because I know personally that a lot of my friends, the leaders of opposition parties, and I have friends among all of them, they are invited inside. You'll back me for that. And deliberations do go on. They say something, I believe, inside, and then they come out and do something else. This is what I hear.
रितेश जी, ऑपोजिशन का ये कहना है कि उनकी जो गवर्नमेंट के सवाल पूछने की जो क्षमता है और जो उनकी जो जगह थी वो कम होती जा रही है. वो दैट स्पेस इज श्रिंकिंग, और वो पार्लियामेंट में भी जो जगह थी और जो मौका मिलता था गवर्नमेंट पे सवाल उठाने के लिए वो भी कम होता जा रहा है. आप ये मानते हैं?
नहीं, बिल्कुल. पहले तो सबसे पहले आपको धन्यवाद. No, I firmly believe what Sushmita ji is saying is absolutely true. देखिए, on one level also you have to see how a parliamentary system is run right now. If you have a whip where parties are supposed to follow it, okay, individual members don't have a way to let their own views about their particular constituencies and vote based on that. When it comes to any sort of law, okay, so you have the party whip. You will have to vote within those lines. That's one aspect, which allows very little space for members to vent their concerns about their local issues.
But
the second
aside
thing is,
voting.
yes,
Let's
the
talk
second
about
thing
debate
is,
and discussion.
The debate, see, you can be called into for an all-party meeting. I've been the leader of my party. We have put forward issues that we want to debate. Let's say if there is issues relating to atrocities towards Dalits, how many times have you heard, have you seen a debate that has come up with this regard? Do you think the BSP does not raise it? How many times have you had the parliament debate issues around sewage workers? Has that never been put forward? It has been. So what are the issues that come up? As Sushmita ji said, sports, drugs. I'm not saying that these are issues that shouldn't be discussed. Obviously that needs to be discussed and it will be discussed. But at the same time, how many issues that have come forward from the opposition? A lot of the times the opposition puts forward areas which it wants to be debated. For example, one of them is what Sushmita ji just mentioned. There was last time the issue around the Hindenburg report. There was various other areas. And what you saw at that point was that the Treasury bench was demanding an apology from a leader from the opposition.
For some statements made outside Parliament.
But to sort of put a final point to it, I still feel that it has to be a give and take game. And in democracy, all members, they are representing about, approximately 2 million people, 2.5 million people. And they have things that they want to put out there. And that should be given space. And, the opposition really does come out with the mood of the nation.
No, so I get your point about being able to raise issues of your constituency. You, of course, come from Lok Sabha. And, of course, raising myriad issues that may concern the public. Now, I see many parliamentarians make decent effort in raising those issues. I don't think there's a dearth of those issues. They raise this in question hour and things like that. I am particularly talking about stalling the proceedings for politics. Yes, GVL, you want to come?
No. There are interventions like 0 hour, where every day you get to 20 MPs at least get to speak about 20 different topics. There is also an instrument called special mention. There again 15, 20. Because of disruptions, what is happening, the entire day's proceedings are getting completely wiped out. It's actually a big, I agree with him. The members of parliament who want to raise their constituencies issues, they are not able to raise because the entire 0 hour, the moment House convenes at 11 o'clock, immediately the noise starts. There have been appeals from the chair several times not to disrupt at least the 0 hour or the question hour, where ministers come and reply to a whole range of questions. The opposition is doing a great disservice to the people of this country by not even allowing ministers to reply.
Okay,
another quick point. You see, whether it is price rise or whether it is Hindenburg report or anything under the sun, in the last session was a budget session, which began with the address of the Honorable President to both houses of Parliament. President's address covers every gamut of governance, practically everything that government does. And budget session talks about you can raise, while speaking on the budget, you can speak on any topic concerning economy. There is no restriction. Your party gets, the Trinamool Congress possibly gets an hour. In that 1 hour, you can choose to speak only about price rise. But why did you stall the entire house? You could have spoken. In fact, some members had spoken about Hindenburg report also. It was not removed from the records. So I think opposition has lost interest in raising issues of public
Can I ask you a counter question? Before I go into how the public perceives this and how this will impact 2024, why don't you also meet the opposition halfway? Let's say they believe strongly that Hindenburg report needs to be debated. Why don't you allow it?
What is the harm in discussing it as part of a budget debate? You see, in a budget session, you can't debate. No, this is not bullying. You are trying to only gain news headlines by raising issues on disrupting the House. You think disruption gets you better mileage than speaking on the subject, because I find most of the speeches in Parliament lack the kind of gravitas that you expect. So people come in, make very routine speeches and leave, and the best thing is to disrupt the House, go for the whole day. So I think that seems to have become now, bunking Parliament has become a...
I'll just add one thing, that even in Rajya Sabha, the upper house, which was known for more sober debates and less politically charged rhetoric and debates, is seeing the kind of disruptions and unruly behavior that is unheard of or unseen before. Should the opposition also not take some responsibility for that?
You have to, there's a choice you make. There's a choice you make. Either you surrender and be subservient to this government, or you fight back. There are no shades of grey in this battle.
So you're saying anything is okay,
yes,
inside
what
house?
I am saying is, if today I am going to be relegated, if I'm going to be relegated to a pawn inside Parliament which toes their line, that's not why I'm in Parliament. Then I would go to their party. Today we are in the opposition. We are meant to fight. We are meant to fight for the people. And let me put on record, I let GVL say all that about how important speeches and all are, because I wanted to put on record that in the last session, not only did the BJP members of Parliament disrupt the entire session, but their ministers came and disrupted the Parliament, saying Rahul Gandhi maafi mango, the entire session. So you can't say chit bhi meri or pat bhi meri, कि आप जब करेंगे तो गलत है और हम जब करेंगे तो सही है. JTC सही थे पर आप गलत है. So take one stand.
No, saying ministers disrupted, that's complete. Then I completely dispute that.
One more thing. The Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha cameras, Shivani, don't even focus on the opposition. Do you know that? Let's say हम मंत्री को एक सवाल पूछ रहे हैं, वो पूरा कैमरा मंत्री को ही दिखाता है और हम जो जीत के आए हैं हमको दिखाते ही नहीं ये लोग लोकसभा और राज्यसभा में.
नहीं, बिल्कुल गलत है.
This is where we are. This is an undeclared emergency in the country.
GVL, very quickly before
this is complete.
No, ऐसा नहीं है. माफी आपने मांगी थी.
No, you see, one second, I'll tell you.
राहुल गांधी से तो माफी मांगी थी.
One second, I'll tell you what happens. Okay, if you have, let's say I'm a member asking a question to the minister, and if three opposition members come behind me, they hold placards, do you expect Rajya Sabha? It's not. No, this is the only time.
This is why we stand behind them.
This is the only time. I think carrying placards in the house. No, one second, let me complete. Okay. Carrying placards inside the chamber is disallowed. And when I am asking a question to the Honorable Minister, your people come behind me and hold placards, and you want Rajya Sabha TV to show that? Obviously, that's the only time when you are not shown on TV. Otherwise, if you
वैसे
Okay, yes, Ritesh. Sonal ji is also nodding. I'll go to her in just. Yes, Ritesh, very quickly.
So, I mean, I would go back to what GVL ji said.
Yes.
First of all, you know, whether it was the Hindenburg report, it deserved at that point a separate discussion. When I'm debating the budget, I want to talk about many things. You've merged the rail budget also in one singular budget. So there's various topics within the budget that needs to be talked about. And I just mentioned my constituency is the foremost concerned at that point, not the Hindenburg report. It required a separate discussion. That said, I just come back to another thing. नया वाला पार्लियामेंट अगर आपने देखा है,
जी,
उसका जो वेल है, वो इतना बड़ा गड्ढा है, उसमें तो जगह भी नहीं है कि आप खड़े होकर के प्रोटेस्ट कर पाएंगे.
तो अच्छी बात है ना.
अब जब आप उसको चाहे जैसे ले लें.
नहीं, बट वेल में आना तो गलत है ना. उसको कैसे
बिल्कुल गलत है. बीएसपी तो उसके हमेशा खिलाफ रहती है. हम लोग तो अपने खेमे में रहते हैं, लेकिन वेल में जाते क्यों है? ताकि कैमरा दिख जाए. अब तो वहां पे वो भी नहीं दिखेगा. माइक इस तरह से बनाए गए हैं कि जब आप कटेंगे तो कटी हुई पतंग की तरह चले जाएंगे. कहां गए इसका कोई पता नहीं रहेगा. तो
one second. Do you have a problem with the new parliament's design, or are you making a separate political?
भाई देखिए,
आप ये तो नहीं कह रहे कि कोई conspiracy है opposition के खिलाफ.
राजनीति में आप क्या दिखते हैं, क्या कर रहे हैं,
हाँ,
और उसका बहुत महत्व होता है. तो अगर कोई प्रोटेस्ट करता है, मैं आपको एक चीज बता दूं, आप जब जंतर मंतर पे बैठते हैं, है ना, तो क्या आपको लगता है सारी जनता आपके मुद्दे जान रही है? वो ये जानती है फला लोग जंतर मंतर पे एक मुद्दा लेकर के बैठे हैं.
रितेश जी, my limited point is, I get your point, but my limited point is, Parliament is not jantar mantar. That is my limited point.
रितेश जी, ये मत कहें, खुला टेबल और माइक भी मिल जाए ताकि हम इधर उधर फेंक सकते हैं. ये तो फिक्स सीट है.
जीवल जी, कहाँ
Sonal ji wants to come in, please.
आप पूरी दुनिया का पार्लियामेंट देखें. अभी कोसोवो में क्या हुआ? वहाँ तो सब पानी
तो ये हमें कोसोवो को थोड़ा
भाई हम तो उनसे अच्छे हैं. हम तो कम से कम जाकर के अपनी आवाज बुलंद कर रहे हैं, उससे ज्यादा तो नहीं कर रहे.
Sonal ji wanted to come in. Sonal ji,
I only want to say something on a lighter note after this wonderful garma garmi that culture को इस सब में स्थान नहीं मिल रहा. My constituency is culture. I'm nominated by the president for culture. And so often that I wanted to bring some very, very important, significant issues. Because after all, I do believe, and I'm sure you'll all agree with me, that culture is the soul of a nation. And it is by culture that we've been known for centuries, apart from other things.
Yes.
So there is no way that I can stand up and ask. The 0 hour is, as Mr. Rao said, 0 hour is cancelled, special mention is cancelled, the star questions also don't come up, whole session is sort of, you know, क्या कहते हैं उसको, 12 बजे, फिर 12:30 बजे, adjourned. The adjournment has become a very popular word now, and I hate it. Because I go there with expectation. Yes. I go there to discuss something which normally does not come up. Nobody thinks of poor artists all over India. There are lakhs and crores of them. उनकी कोई बात नहीं करता है. उनकी बात करने की जगह कहाँ है? तो मैं कह रही हूँ कि when what you said, I was nodding because मेरे पीछे भी आके खड़े हो जाते थे. तो I would just, you know, make my dancer eyes, and they would say, okay, and they would move away. But point is कि हम लोगों को बोलने के लिए भी समय ना मिले, पूरी सेशन धुल जाए, फायदा क्या है?
Okay.
Only part we had discussion in this second part of budget session was about Natu Oscar nomination. We had discussion for about 2 hours. Our award, Natu, everyone spoke, and that's the only 2 hours we had peace in the house.
Yeah, but I want to just say to Sonal ji, because she is nominated by the president for her, she's excelled in the cultural field. सोनल जी, सबको बताइए ना, लास्ट सेशन में कौन डिस्टर्ब किया पार्लियामेंट? बीजेपी कि राहुल गांधी माफी मांगो कौन बोल रहे थे कार्ड लेके? आप तो न्यूट्रल है, आप इंडिपेंडेंट हैं, आप बोलिए ना.
नो, आप एक ही सेशन की क्यों बात कर रही हैं? फिर
सिर्फ पिछले सेशन का बता दीजिए.
नहीं, क्यों एक ही सेशन की बात कर रही हैं?
अवॉइड कर रहे हैं.
क्यों एक ही सेशन की बात करें?
आप बोलिए ना कि लास्ट टाइम मंत्री लोग फ्लोर पे आके,
आपके कहने से मैं नहीं बोलूंगी।
फ्लोर पे आके राहुल गांधी माफी मांगो, माफी मांगो।
आपके कहने पर तो मैं नहीं बोलूंगी। मैं तो कह रही हूँ कि पिछले पूरे वर्ष की जो 4-6 सेशंस होती हैं, उनकी तो बात कीजिए ना।
मेरे पास कुछ नंबर्स है, मेरे पास कुछ नंबर्स है, मैं वो नंबर्स पढ़ देती हूँ। बजट सेशन जिसकी बहुत चर्चा हो रही है, उसमें प्रोडक्टिविटी 33 and 24% for Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha respectively. Before that monsoon session last year, both houses less than 50%. A year before that for monsoon session was less than 30% for both houses. So, you know, the public is watching and the public is not interested in ki kiski galti thi, kisne naare uthaye aur kisne placard lagaye. So, Shmita, let me come to you.
Yeah.
We are talking about the road to 2024, and I think this is a young India that watches globally the standards set by parliamentarians, Kosovo aside. I don't think we are trying to aim for Kosovo, but, you know, jokes aside. Are you as the opposition winning the narrative that you are not being allowed to speak, so this is okay? Or do you think this is going against you?
See, Shivani, let me tell you something. When the 2G, 3G scam happened during UPA time, do you remember those days?
Yes.
What did the BJP do in the parliament? So, you are talking about narrative. See, what the biggest problem is, on the one hand, it is people saying, where is the opposition? What are they doing? कहाँ हैं ये लोग? दिखते नहीं है, कुछ नहीं कर रहे हैं, मोदी सरकार ऐसे कर रही है. And when we protest, I take pride in the fact that we protested against the farm laws. And if
Do you see a sense in global capitals that they see India as the country to take a long bet on?
Oh yeah, I don't think that anyone feels they can afford to ignore India. That's out of the question. That's been evolving since the beginning of the century. And I would say that what's interesting is that it's straddled both parties in our system and all governments in major countries. In other words, of course, Russia's only had Mr. Putin, but if you look at America, they've had Republican and Democratic presidents. We've had in France a series of different administrations. But right across, there's been the sense that India is a force to be reckoned with on the world stage, a country that must be taken seriously. And I think that the government has done well to work assiduously at it and take this up. I should preface this by saying that, to be honest, right from the days when I used to chair the Foreign Affairs Committee in Parliament, I took the line that there is no such thing as a BJP foreign policy or a Congress foreign policy. There's only India's foreign policy and India's national interests. And when it comes to our place in the world, we are all Indians, and I see it that way. So I want to stress to begin with that I'm not sort of suddenly turning out to be a lovey-dovey voice, but on foreign policy, I think by and large, and I used to be a critic at the beginning of the Modi administration of some of their failings, but I think they've really touched all the bases reasonably well. I mean, I remember the first year of Mr. Modi's prime ministership, he traveled to 27 countries, and not one of them was an Islamic country, and I made a bit of a fuss about that as a Congress MP and as a voice in the public space, and I'm delighted to say that what he's done subsequently in outreach to the Islamic world has been exemplary. In fact, it could not be bettered. We have outstanding relations with major Muslim countries, particularly in the Gulf, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and so on. And that's something which I think is to the credit of India and of the government. So I'm not going to take that. I'm happy to take back my earlier criticism.
Okay, but there are challenges therein as well, and the biggest seems to be China. What would the Congress have done differently with clearly a big power, a bigger economic power, a bigger military power that is hell-bent on changing the status quo, forcibly that too?
Sure, but you know, there's something there, Zaka, that we part company. When it comes to national security, we're all one. And I don't think anyone would have any difference of view on that. What we were not happy about was the Prime Minister seemingly giving the Chinese a free pass by saying that they haven't taken any Indian territory, because our concern is there was basically an unspoken modus vivendi for the last almost half a century, going back to the last shot fired in anger on the border was in 1976. Thereafter, look, I claim my borders up to there, you claim your borders up to here, so you patrol here on Monday and I patrol there on Tuesday, and we keep it going. I'm only partially making light of it, but that was more or less the way it worked. There was no shot fired in anger, there were very few incidents of guns being pointed at each other. We had worked it out. What happened then after was that the Chinese came into this space and occupied it with enduring structures, took over places, essentially made patrolling we had been doing all the way up to April, May of 2020 impossible for our army. Now that's, whether it's technically Indian territory or still disputed territory that they've occupied, is a different issue. Our Prime Minister, we felt, should not have given the Chinese a free pass on that. That's one area on which the Congress was critical. A second concern we have is, there's a number of places that are not entirely comfortable right across the LAC. We've talked about Ladakh mainly because that's where the 20 Jawans were killed, but you go all the way up to Arunachal. Now what you're seeing is there are a number of points which we used to patrol which are no longer accessible to us. In Ladakh, there was this paper that came out that the government quickly disowned, which said by senior police officers in the area that 26 out of 65 patrolling points are no longer accessible to our folks. That's bad news. Now, I understand that our business community wants to import Chinese goods. Our manufacturers feel that China has a lot to offer us that we can't do without. But that on the one hand, we go around doing something frankly rather tokenistic like banning 58 Chinese apps, a slap on the wrist. And we don't do anything about the extraordinary dependence we have on China for imports, which continue to grow. The trade deficit between our two countries is over $90 billion in China's favor. And trade went as high as 139 billion last year. There's something about that that isn't right. Whether the government has failed to help businesses recalibrate their needs, whether simply they have not explored enough alternatives, or whether they basically accepted that they have no choice but to live with China, it doesn't send a particularly healthy signal. Foreign Minister Jaishankar has very clearly said we can't have normal relations until the status quo ante is restored on the border. But there's been absolutely no move by China to come back to what the status quo was before the tragic events of 2020. And since they're not going to do that, what is our posture? Why is it that the government won't discuss this in Parliament? Why won't they take the nation into confidence as to what our constraints are, what our vision is, how we hope to move forward? There are, frankly, 20 deaths that the government still is accountable for, and it needs to find some answers.
All right, let's talk a little bit domestic politics as well. All roads today seem to be leading to Bangalore. There's the big opposition meeting, unity meeting, and so on. To explain this to our viewers, imagine this is a hall of people who are your potential voters. Why would they vote for a ragtag bunch of about 20-odd parties with no declared face and whose unity very much is in question?
Well, first of all, no one's voting.
Let me just say, so I'm not saying it's not so simple that 2 and 2 is 4.
Okay, but can I ask you a counter question? Yes, the BJP is trying to bring some of its allies back. Fair enough, they left them midway. But BJP is so large that none of the allies are going to be able to push and pull it in a manner that it doesn't function, that allies. In case of the opposition, the charge is that no one party is so big that it can play that role, and therefore it will be contradictions galore.
See, I'll tell you something. Let me, for the sake of the audience, tell you a very basic thing. See, there are around 180 plus seats in which there's a direct contest between Congress and the BJP. There's no third party. Okay? That's Congress's bastion, and whether we like it or not, you said I left the Congress. I don't want to get into that. That's not the topic of discussion today. The fact is, they are the party with the second largest share, vote share in the country. So they have to fight where they are strong, and the other parties who are coming together, whether it is the RJD, whether it is Nitish Kumar ji, whether it's Mamata Banerjee ji, they have to fight in their bastions. Okay. So where is the confusion? Today you're talking about bickering and fighting and this, that. Look, politics is very dynamic. There was a time when Modi ji in his campaign says, "Ye to baap beti ki sarkar hai," but he tied up with Mufti. Mehbooba. So these
I
things
get your
are
point. I have
dynamic
30
in politics.
seconds left. I'll let GVL respond to how nervous are you about this, because this time the effort seems to be more concerted and more confident than last time. The opposition effort.
With a great deal of nervousness, we are confident of winning 350 seats in 2024 for the BJP alone.
350 for the BJP.
For the BJP alone. And with the same nervousness, we will ensure that nobody in the opposition again gets a leader of the opposition status. Our leader, the whole NDA stands behind Honorable Prime Minister Modi as the leader. The opposition does not have it doesn't have a leader, it doesn't have agenda, it's only some kind of a mutual protection that they are involved in. And in the state, in recent panchayat polls, we have seen how TMC cadres, how they were attacking other political parties, including the friendly Congress party.
Yes.
There were several Congress cadres who were killed in panchayat polls. But Mamata Banerjee is trying to really hobnob.
So you think it will not work?
People of the country will give their verdict.
Okay. I have run out of time. I do thank all of our guests for joining us. It was a pretty healthy debate, and maybe in the next parliament session, which is starting very soon, we'll have a healthy debate and no disruptions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Over
Thank
to
you,
Grin.
Shivani.
Thank you, Shivani, for moderating that super panel. And thank you so much, our distinguished guests, for joining us on this conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, I request you to please have a huge round of applause for our speakers, as they have in fact had a very insightful chat and also presented a roadmap for you to understand which way are the elections headed as far as the general elections of 2024 are concerned. So ladies and gentlemen, huge round of applause once again for our distinguished panelists. And with that, let me take this opportunity to move to our next guest this evening, who is a diplomat turned politician and is one of the few Indians to preside over the United Nations Security Council and the only one to have chaired its Counter-Terrorism Committee. He is currently at the helm of departments and ministries that play a critical role in influencing India's growth story. As a Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, he is focused on increasing domestic production of crude oil and natural gas, alongside generating a gas-based economy that entails a renewed focus on improving the availability and the utilization of cleaner fossil fuels. And as Union Housing and Urban Affairs Minister, he has an overarching mandate over the development of urban infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Honourable Minister, Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri, and joining him is Shivani Gupta.
Thank you, everyone. And Hardeep ji, thank you so much for making time. I'll just dive right in because there is a lot of ground to cover and we're looking forward to the next elections. But I do want to ask a few things that you are directly in charge of. Now, when we talk about the 2024 elections, one of the consistent and strongest attacks against your government is on inflation. Even now, the biggest issue being debated by opposition and being asked for on the streets of India is, prices of commodities, but petrol and diesel prices play a very big role in that. Currently, a litre of petrol continues to be around roughly 100 rupees across India. In January 2019, before your last government came to power, petrol was 68 rupees. Since then, it once became 75, it became 83, and is currently, for example, 96 in the national capital. So my first question to you is, hasn't the government failed, and you're the Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister, in mitigating this stress on the common public?
Let me start by thanking you and your esteemed channel, CNN News 18, for having me here. And thank you also for giving me this opportunity to nail the lie right at the outset. You said there has been some criticism against the government. No, there's no criticism against the government. There is a false canard which has been spread against the government that prices are very high. It used to be 60 rupees then. I mean, why don't you say in 1973 it was probably 4 rupees or 5 rupees? You have to see what is happening in the world today.
And I have some statistics which I'm quite happy to share with you as to what is happening to global prices during a pretty representative period. Now, I have some figures here for June 2021, and June 2023.
Yes.
In terms of global increases, okay? And some of the figures that stare you in the face is that even in a highly developed industrial economy like the United States, which is a $24 trillion economy or $25 trillion, the price of petrol has gone up between June 21 and June 23. It has gone up from 59.58 to 77.55, which is an increase of 30%.
We have these numbers on our screen.
No, it's gone up by, since I don't know what numbers you have there, I presume that they are the correct numbers.
They are the correct numbers.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
In Canada, UK, in Nepal, in Sri Lanka, in Bangladesh, petrol and diesel prices, if you compare that, let me take South Asia. There are some particularly difficult cases. Sri Lanka, petrol price went up during that period by 79.61% and 130.65%, diesel respectively. Pakistan by 50.83% and 40.81%, petrol and diesel. In Nepal by 42.39% and 46.35%. Now, my submission to you is that you compare products and prices which are broadly similar. I mean, if you're a trade negotiator, you know, there's a term, produit similar. You can't compare an elephant with a horse. They are different. But if you look at across the board, in our neighborhood, in the developed industrialized countries, this is the situation.
So I have these numbers. I think these are numbers that your ministry has also shared. So the percentage increase in developed countries has been far more for both petrol and diesel, you're saying, over the last
Not only
2
developed,
years.
developed and developing.
And developing.
See, I've taken as a developing country, representative countries around India, South Asia. I can take...
My only question to that would be that should we compare ourselves to a Sri Lanka,
No,
to a Pakistan, to a Nepal?
No, so then do me a favor.
Yes.
We are the 5th largest economy now. We were the 10th largest. We're going to be the 3rd largest economy, say, in a year and a half's time. Compare me to the United States. Compare me to Germany. We are still much lower. Our increase has been 2.36%. Germany's increase is 19%. So you can't have the... have it both ways. That don't compare me with the developed countries around India. You can compare me with the industrialized West. On all accounts, this was achieved essentially because the Prime Minister was able to reduce the central government excise duty on 2 occasions, November of 2021 and May of 2022. Now, if you see the differences between the state governments, there's a marked difference. If you bring the statistics on in the state governments, see the BJP-ruled states and the other ones.
Can we have those numbers on the screen as well? So your point being that you've done what you could do, both in terms of international pressures on crude pricing because of the Ukraine war, and internally also BJP has done more. Have I got it right?
No, I would... if I were you, I'd be more generous in terms of the appreciation. I would say you have done what you can, which means I'm throwing up my hands. No, we've done remarkably well. Petrol price comparison, let me give you. USA 30%, Canada 30.15%, Canada 24%, France 22%, Germany 19%. These are all increases. Spain 17%, Italy 14.6%, and India 2.36%. You are 1/5 of the lowest. That is 10.93%. It's UK. You're 1/7 of the Italians, and you're 1/15 of the US. These are increases. Now, why do I say that this is something that ought to be acknowledged in the first instance? And after you acknowledge it, you say, all right, we're all in it together. If international prices go up, there's a reason for that. 85% of the crude that you consume in India is imported. Why is the international price going up? Because there is a producing countries grouping. I am deliberately not using the word cartel. They want to control the amount of energy or crude oil which is released in the market. And if you ask them about prices, they will tell you, we don't control the prices, we only control the amount of crude that comes in. Now, if you tell me, if you're an undergraduate student of the situation, you'll know if the amount of crude oil required is curtailed, prices will go up. And yet prices have, because we have played the market card, by and large we've been able to hold ground, and our oil companies took a big beating. The central government, at a time when it was feeding 800 million people free food, free rations, dry rations thrice in a day, they still did not increase prices. So what's happened today? Prices haven't gone up, as far as I remember, for 1 year, since April of 2022, and the percentage decline. Okay, in real terms this is a decline, because you've got a dollar exchange rate somewhere in between also. But all said and done, we have managed to do this. Now, you can say, what more do you expect to do? And that is where I would be more positive, but let me first do some comparison. Let's look at petrol price comparison between BJP-ruled and non-BJP ruled states. I think anyone who has looked at this should stop talking about, this is what my headline drafting friends here call Pardafash. Is that correct? Okay. In Gandhinagar, the price, and in Jaipur, the price difference is 11 rupees 85 per litre. When you go and fill your tank, you don't fill 1 litre. How much you fill? What is the tank size of a, say, medium-sized car? 30 litres? 30 litres or so? More. So 30 litres into 11.85. So if you were filling up a car in, say, Gandhinagar, and the difference in Jaipur, the difference would be something like 450 rupees per fill. If you look at the difference between Guwahati and Kolkata, rupees 8 difference. If it's a difference between Lucknow and Bangalore, 5 rupees 37 paise. And between Goa and Raipur, 4 rupees 77 paise. In each case. So, my submission to you, madam, even at the risk of saying something which is self-serving, and I'm very proud of being able to do that, this is not criticism. This is a canard which is sought to be spread, and I think people who throw statistics at us ought to be ashamed of themselves.
So you're saying this inflation charge on you doesn't stick, and
no, I'm not saying.
Will it not hurt you ahead of 2024?
No. First of all, I am merely saying that if you look at the one commodity which in your perception contributes to the so-called inflation discussion, I've just given you the hard facts. Let me also give you the facts on gas. Just give me a second. You know, natural gas, okay? There's a difference between the gas that you produce and sell in a cylinder and the natural gas which comes in liquefied form. It comes at the port of entry, you gasify it, goes through a pipe, and it's it. The increase between April 2021 and September 2022, I'm taking you the percentage change. Henry Hub USA increased 262% increase. Japan, Korea marker 648% increase. TTF Europe's 850% increase. NBP London 677, and CNG price in India only 75. So all I'm saying is, if it were an ideal world where energy was just available either off the ground or from a tap, and you had none of these factors, then we would be having a different discussion. The fact of the matter is, India today still imports, if my figures are correct, about 50% of its gas and about 80% of the crude oil. And yet, in spite of those constraints, we've been able to keep the prices not only stable but low, which has meant that the government has foregone the revenue which comes from excise. The BJP states have reduced their VAT.
Some of the other states, regrettably, have not. I'm not doing name calling. Now, and more important that the OMCs took a beating, if I remember correctly, on gas. They lost something like 28,000 crores. We had to compensate them, I think, by 22,000 crores. Equally on petrol, they took a beating. We gave them equity, I think, about 30,000 crores or something like that. So, coming back to inflation. Yes, inflation should be a healthy discussion in a democracy, more so in India. But when we have a discussion on inflation, at least on petrol, let's find out who's responsible.
All right, fair enough. You've presented the numbers. Let the public make its mind. The other question I want to ask you is about urban development, your other ministry. And by the way, you are the longest serving housing and urban affairs minister in the history of India. Can I begin by asking you, how did you manage that?
How did I manage what?
What's your secret? How did you continue to be the urban and housing?
That's a very polite way of saying, why didn't you get sacked?
No, that's not what I mean. I mean, there must be a secret. You've made the longest
No, there's no secret on anything. I mean, there's no secret on anything. I mean, look, with all humility, I must tell you, it is entirely the Honorable Prime Minister's prerogative as to which of his colleagues he appoints to a particular portfolio. Now, I think there was some eyebrows raised, if I may say that, when I was appointed, because I came after 39 years in the world of foreign security and trade policy.
Yes.
All right? I was a Foreign Service career diplomat, 39 years there. I spent 6 years in the international world of foreign and security policy, think tanking, and then I've been minister for nearly 6 years. So, I'm always reluctant to answer the question, how have you served so long? Because, anything you might say might be held against you. As before you're taking somebody in any statement that you make now, it can be held against you. Look, I feel deeply privileged that the Honorable Prime Minister chose me without any known experience in this field. Although there was somebody I worked with very closely in my international thing, who was a former Prime Minister of Australia, Kevin Rudd. He was the chair of the Independent Commission on Multilateralism when I was its Secretary General. And when he heard that I had become Minister for Housing and Urban Affairs, he had a very interesting point to make. He said, trust somebody like Mr. Modi, because out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that we are dealing with, SDGs, 6 of them are dealt with my ministry in some form or the other.
So can I come to that?
11, SDG 11 and so on.
Yes, so can I come to that? You obviously helmed Smart Cities initiative. You also helmed the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban. Just speaking of urban development and smart cities, you would see what Delhi is going through currently, right?
It's entirely Mr. Kejriwal's fault.
So you're saying you have no role to play in that?
Land is a state subject, yaar. I mean, if you can't start a discussion with that, I mean, this guy gets up every morning and makes some false claim or the other, some absurd claim. I had the privilege of hosting the Honorable Chief Minister of Haryana the other day for a meeting in my room, and we were discussing serious subject. When he came, there was a press, and somebody asked him this question that he is blaming you. I mean, I admire Mr. Khattar's, Manohar Lalji's restraint. He said with a straight face, slight smile, he said, I think there's a difference between a barrage and a dam. So, I mean, if your local authorities, I am not going into name calling, because I think this, as my friend Gajan Singh ji said, the Jal Shakti Minister, not the time for name calling. But if you're going to tell me, I'll say, you have a mechanism to deal with this, you set up meetings don't take place, you're supposed to, when I was Joint Secretary Navy, we used to have something like desilting, cleaning the, this thing. If local authorities under new... I saw one of my colleagues in the party, I find him a sense of... He said, please let us know how much you spent on advertisement and how much energy or time or resources you spent on what you're supposed to do. Look, young lady, land is a state subject.
No, sir. Let me come in. I'm just talking about the concept of urban development. This is also the National Capital Region. I just want to understand from you, isn't India failing when it comes to all of the
Not
cities?
at all.
I'm not just talking about Delhi.
India is not failing.
Indian cities.
No,
this is the same case in Bengaluru. This is the same case in Chennai. The same case in Trivandrum.
That's first of all, I think before we carry this discussion too further, there is something called a climate change overall process. All right? These rains, I don't know what your meteorological friends tell you, whether these were the heaviest in 42 years or 50 years. I just saw pictures. New York and other cities have had the most severe rainfall in 50 years. That will take place. All right. So you will be. I am a professional. When I look at a figure, I'll say, all right, we had this last year, we had this previous year. Is it getting better or not? Are you devoting the resources required or not? I'm telling you, I have written N number of letters to chief ministers, to chief secretaries. My colleague has written saying, please, on urban flooding, take the following measures. Some states have, some have not. What happens is, because memory is short, you know, hopefully they'll turn around saying the worst is over, so now business as usual. No, you have budgetary provisions to deal with these things. And some of the things that we are doing in the Swachh Bharat scheme, for instance, are bringing immediate results. What happens? We have now a source segregation at the point of production. Wet waste, dry waste. Then you have collection from the place of production, all right? Now, two things. In 2014, the percentage of waste which was reprocessed was 17%. Today, in the 9 years of the Modi government, that has gone up from 17% to 76%. And we are taking it now for 100% reprocessing. So there is it's a legacy issue. We've inherited a problem. But the assessment comes, are you better off today or worse off? And I make the case to you, we are much better off. Wherever there are BJP governments, I can sit down with you and say, I'm not saying you've been able to get rid of the problem. The remediation on legacy dump sites, the kind of work that is being done elsewhere, yes, we are doing better. I'm not saying this to criticize anyone because I don't think this is to be critical. Yes. But you know, at the height of the thing when it's taking place, you have ministers of the Delhi government following a shoot and scoot. Are uska kya hua? Tumne ye nahi kiya, maine ye bheja tha. You don't fight with your people at that stage. People come into this, roll up their sleeves or their trousers, get into the trenches and solve the problem. That should be the spirit.
Okay, but let me ask you, you've recently said that urban planning restricts rather than facilitates development in India. What did you mean exactly, and what are the changes that you would like to see happen in urban?
Please give me the full quote, because that's, I think, a very...
No, this is from a newspaper report where you said urban planning rules today restrict more than they facilitate development. You would like them to be more wholesome and holistic, so that more development can take place and restrict people more.
No, it's very simple. The whole concept of urbanization, you see, before 2014, there was a tendency for people to think this is a problem, we don't embrace it. But Mr. Modi came along and he realized that today you have a very interesting situation. I mean, the statistics will startle you. I think cities account for a very small percentage of our land area. I think if taken together, the cities will not be more than 3 or 4 or 5% city. They account for 60% of our GDP. And it's going up. When in 1947, the urban population was 17%, but the total population was 350 million. Today, our urban population should be 30%, and our overall population would be what, 1.4 billion? So, urban, the capacity to think urban, to plan. I mean, how many universities? It's only after Mr. Modi has come that we are encouraging universities to take up urban studies in their curricula. We are now encouraging newly graduated engineers to first spend 1 or 2 years in the urban local bodies as interns. There's a tulip scheme. So we are doing that. But it must ultimately include citizen participation. What is the existing system? Existing system is, out of the 4,900 urban local bodies we have, many of them have matured to the point where they're raising, through municipal bonds, they've raised 4,000 crores, I think. But we want everyone to do it. But normally, the traditional style is, if you are a locally elected politician, bhai ye jo log rehte hain, to hamare hi parivar ke hain, hamare saathi hain, why collect taxes from them? That was the attitude. Today, it's very different. Okay. People take pride. Like, for instance, in the Swachhta Sarvekshan every year, one or two cities come right on top. One of them, these are in Indore, for instance.
Yes.
And when the garbage collection van goes out in the morning, there is merriment, there is singing, etc. People realize if you have a Swachh environment, land value goes up. I mean, there's a difference between two very famous markets which was given to refugees in Delhi itself. One has very high prices, the other one not so high prices, roughly the same time. So that realization is coming. So it's not the rules, it's the consciousness which must seep into people. That is what I meant.
Okay, I want to ask you, move into the realm of politics now and not just your ministries.
I was waiting for that. I thought the whole session was 1 year to go for politics, so I thought...
I thought I have the minister with me. I'll ask a couple of questions related to your two very key ministries.
You've done that. Now let's come to politics.
Yes. So I want to ask you on the issue of infrastructure. Between your ministries and several of your colleagues' ministries, some of the big ticket infrastructure that is being built, and you obviously helped the Awas Yojana as well, there are like 75 lakh homes that have been already completed. But on the issue of big ticket infrastructure, the second term of the Modi government seems to be acing that department. My question,
what?
Acing that department. There's a lot of big ticket infrastructure coming up across the country, airports, etc., highways, and the government seems to be doing a fabulous job on that. Even the critics would accept. But my question is this. Recent election results from states show that people are also looking for an immediate gain
You mean the reveries?
Well, that's the term you use.
I don't use it. I mean, you use it.
The Prime Minister has used the word bravery.
Okay.
You can call them freebies. But my question to you is, and seriously, Minister, public also wants an immediate gain and not just long-term development that, let's say, the Modi government may be doing. Is the BJP prepared politically to cut that so-called freebie advantage that the opposition or the guarantees model of the opposition? How are you going to do that?
Now, anybody who's watching this exchange would say that you have a very subdued, very quiet minister who's responding to a barrage of strong questioning. So let me start by puncturing a few holes in your questioning itself. Short term, medium term, long term. No matter which way you look at it, the Modi government's track record in the last 9 years has been a win-win for the country. Let me start with some basic things. The entire spend on the urban rejuvenation in the 10 years from 2004 and 14 was 1,57,000 crores. I'm not going into, you're saying big project, small project, small. Let me give you the overall picture. In the urban spend, 1,57,000 crores over a 10-year period. Along comes Mr. Modi in May 2014. Our schemes were conceptualized and implemented from June 2015. Madam, from June 2015, which was 8 years ago, almost exactly, the expenditure today is over 18 lakh crores. There's 1,57,000 crores, then there is 8. Now, short term, what is short term? The Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, don't take just the urban, take the rural also.
Sure.
Total is what, 3 crore homes?
Yes.
3 crore homes have been sanctioned. Now, if you come to the urban part, 1 crore 12 lakhs have been sanctioned and grounded. Or 1 crore 9 lakh have been grounded. And 75 lakhs, that's the figure that you've given, madam, they have been given to the beneficiary.
Handed over, yes.
So 75 lakh guys who are households who've got it, it's not a promissory note. It is actually they've moved in. The Prime Minister's handed over keys or the Chief Minister's handed over keys. Then you look at all the other schemes of the Modi government. All right. Look, I am not trying to say, now just because you completed most of your work in the first term or before this thing, look, I've had the privilege of being a civil aviation minister, right? Many of these airports you're talking about, which are now Jewar is going to come in, that was done in my time. So it's a development on all fronts simultaneously. So what Mr. Modi has demonstrated, and I say this with a great deal of satisfaction and confidence, that good governance means the delivery of goods and services to your people, to the beneficiaries, is also good politics. Therefore, that good governance is helping result in impact in the political system. Now, if you take one or two elections out of context, now let me tell you.
For example, free water, free electricity promises, stipends monthly.
Look, there will always be an attempt to say, isko free kar do. I saw an ad in a Delhi newspaper, I think it was an English language paper, full page, that henceforth in Punjab you will have 0 bills on electricity. All right? Fair enough. I think there comes a time when people have to make that determination. First of all, the ability to comply. We had an election in a state government recently and said we are going to make bus rides free, I think for women to start with, I don't know. Then when they got in, there was a conductor. They threw the conductor out. He said, "Agar ticket nahi hai, what are you doing here?" Then one lady's arm got chopped off and other things are happening. So look, the line of division between responsible political discourse and what I call a lumpen, irresponsible, we'll make this free, we'll make that free. Yes, if you're generating the resources, you have the ability to divert. But if you're running a large debt, like in Punjab, I think it was 3,81,000 crores when we had the last election, it would be a multiplier of that. Including in the southern states, they're running. So what do you want to do? You want a Sri Lanka kind of situation?
No, the question is not what I want to do.
No, we're going to win the election.
It is working with
yeah, it's going to work. There's a difference in the dynamic between a state assembly election and a national election. It's happened when I was writing my second book. I remember it was after the victories of the opposition party in 2 of the states. And I had written that the BJP is heading for a very substantive improvement on the 2014 results. And my publisher sent me a note saying that, "Sir, would you like to revisit your conclusions on the state assembly results?" And I said, "Thank you very much for drawing my attention. It had crossed my mind. And please allow me to write an extended introduction," which I said, this will result in our crossing 300. So, issue is, yes, there will be attempts to forge unity. You have some meeting taking place, I think, in one of the southern states.
Yes.
Next time they'll hopefully go to Himachal, if the rainwaters allow them there and the hospitality is extended. Look, there are fault lines in people. I'm not criticizing them. But, say, we are going to come together with one purpose, which is what? We must ensure that X does not get elected. Is that a plank on which you will go and face the people? When you come before the people, yes, you can say we will make everything free. Everything. From food, electricity, transport, everything. That's a political plank. But the place where they're holding a meeting, they should do some serious introspection even in that city. And I'm very familiar with that city, where what are those promises which were made? How have they been delivered? In Punjab, they said any person who's got an educational qualification beyond a point, 1,000 rupees mahina for every bitya in the house, or somebody who's got a degree but doesn't have a job. Now, these are very easy things to talk about. And I think at the end of the day, they start tripping up. But I'm making the submission to you, good governance is equal to good politics, is what Modi ji and the BJP have consistently demonstrated. That will work.
So good economics is also good politics, you're saying. That's what Narendra Modi government has shown.
No. Good governance means what? You have to make sure that goods and services are delivered to people. I mean, you have very famous people who've been a finance minister. They sometimes get up and make all kinds of statements. I read one by the other day. He said, "Ye Swachh Bharat mission hai, kya hai?" So I told my people, take it as a challenge. Find out what this is. And they did. It was somebody's private land. So I said, don't get overawed. When these missions started, people said, "Arey bhai, Swachhta kya hua?" Today, the fear of losing your third-party verification on being ODF, open defecation free, is, believe me, Shivani, a real thing for people. When the Swachhta Sarvekshan takes place, I have ministers of state governments calling me, "Sir, isme weightage kam hai, isme thoda dekh lijiye," which means they care for it. It's the public and a evaluation system which is writing your, what is it called, an annual confidential report on how clean or, correct you've been on that.
Okay, so you've taken the question on the opposition unity. I don't need to ask you that. I just want to quickly open up the audience round as well. We see hands going up already. My colleague Shireen is going to get some questions fired in.
Thank you, Shivani.
Good evening, sir. I am a Vayusainik veteran, Krishan Mitru. I have some urban infrastructure questions on two topics. Number one is Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016 versus the real estate industry in India. Second one is regarding the floods. Coming to the first point, in the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, real estates have been driven into the NCLAT, including the home buyers. Now, home buyers have been specified by our present Chief Justice of India, who says that home buyers are consumers. They come under the Consumer Protection Act and not under the IBC. Your ministry and MCA went to the government, got it passed overnight that home buyers come under the IBC. Now, very briefly, home buyers are the medium class category who have been affected by the real estate industry. There are thousands and lakhs in number all over the country.
Sir, could you just fire in your question?
I'm happy to listen to him, but I think you have to ask, because I hear a statement, much of what you're saying I am familiar with.
Sir, what's your question?
And I'm also on the side of the home buyers, but many of the things you're saying are factually wrong. So, okay, let me respond.
Sir, why are we not taking the home buyers out of the IBC?
Okay, all right.
Now,
let's take that. Let's allow the minister to respond.
Okay, Mr. Mitru, is that finished or has he got another one?
Floods
okay.
also.
No, let me complete this,
Sir,
because...
Sir.
Look, there are two things. We had this peculiar situation that 70 years after we became an independent country, we did not have a regulator in the real estate sector. And we did not have a regulator in the real estate sector for a variety of reasons. And I am quite happy to be upfront and completely candid about it, because there were vested interests. Even when RERA was being drafted, a lot of people said, no, this is too little, too late. And as was to be expected, and I'm not taking any credit, much before I became a minister, when RERA came into being, there were multiple challenges mounted, and the learned Supreme Court passed them all on, I think, to the Mumbai High Court. I became a minister in September 2017, 3rd September, and I was very confident that the court will throw out these challenges. So the first big victory we won was that RERA came into being. Now, if you look at the performance of RERA, both as a dispute settlement mechanism, and if you look at the performance of RERA in order to, bring under its ambit all the pipeline projects, that was a great victory. Now, insofar as the insolvency NCLT process is concerned, please look at the individual cases. Many of those people have gone there themselves. The people who the mechanism is not working, I can tell you why it's not working. We can have a separate discussion. But we have taken a number of steps. For instance, we are bringing down the cases. I have appointed a committee under my friend Amitabh Khan to look at the remaining projects which need to be resolved, and they have, I think, done their homework, and they're going to be submitting a rule. We have done several other things. So I think we should have a separate discussion on that.
Yeah, all right. I do thank the gentleman for the question. We don't have any more time for your follow-up. And I also, one second, sir. I also have our next guest in the house. So I just want to have enough time with the minister to fire rapid-fire questions. So you have a yes or no banner next to you.
I thought there was another question coming.
No, we don't have any more time.
You don't have time?
No.
The next speaker is here? So, okay.
Yes.
Okay,
I just want you to take that banner, thing next to you on the table. So
Which
where your
banner?
papers are. There is a yes or no placard. So I'm just going to fire you some questions. These are going to be yes or no questions.
The answers facing me or the audience?
The audience.
Okay. Because I can have it both ways. If my answer is 6, I said, no, it's one way here, another one there.
All right, let me fire in some quick questions. I enjoyed being a diplomat more than being a politician and minister. Yes or no?
Question can't be answered. You have different challenges there, so I'm going to do something unprecedented. I'm not answering the question.
You must pick one.
No, I don't have to.
Okay. I am the better diplomat at home between me and my wife. Yes or no?
No, my wife is also a diplomat, yaar.
Who's the better one? You?
No, hold on. No. Better is defined what? When we appeared in the UPSC exam in 1974, she topped the thing. So she's better at the whole thing. And she's been better all her life. So she's better.
So no.
No, she's better.
Yeah, so question was that are you better? So the answer
No, I'm not better. Not at all. Okay. Anyone who in a public this thing takes a side which is against the, against, SDG 5, pata hai kya hai na? Gender equality. वो तो मरने वाली बात है, भाई. नहीं, not at all. I like the lady in the front seat. She's cheering as she should.
Okay.
And I see the gentleman also. Okay.
All right, you didn't answer the first question, so I'm asking it in a different way.
Ask it again, I'll answer it.
You'll answer it? Yeah. I enjoyed being a diplomat more than being a politician and minister. Yes or no? No. Okay. So
your question was enjoy.
Yes.
Enjoy. As a diplomat, I couldn't speak up the way I can speak now.
Okay.
I get trolled also, I can do that also. If you said, what did you find more satisfying, I would have had a different answer. But I picked on that word, enjoy.
Yes,
no, a politician is good. Because you give me gali, I'll give you gali in return. So enjoyment to usme hai na.
Okay, connected to that is my next question. If I could do it all again, I would become a diplomat again. Yes or no? All right. Fuel and energy prices will witness a substantial cut before 2024 elections. Yes or no?
I'll direct you to where the answer might be found. No, it's the international scene. If today I took a review meeting, and a few days ago the prices were at 70 plus, today they're at $80 a barrel. Now, if the prices keep going up, your capacity to cushion a reduction is correspondingly less. So, I don't think a responsible minister should sit in a town hall and speculate on prices. Then you are not this thing. I think then you are, what kehte hai wo, trader on Dalal Street or something, no?
Okay, sir, I have 10 seconds. NDA will come back to power in 2024 with a bigger mandate than in 2019. Yes or no?
And I can give you a figure also.
Yes.
Last time I said 10% more. Okay? So we went from 270 something to 303. This time the choice is, and I'm still wavering, I think it will not be a 10% more, it will closer to a 20% more.
All right. On that note, we've come to an end of this very, very interesting, enjoyable session. Mr. Hardeep Puri, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on our town hall.
Thank you so much, Shivani, and thank you so much, Mr. Puri, for sharing your valuable insights. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for the Honourable Minister. As we move closer to the end of our town hall, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, a prominent leader known for his straightforward approach and progressive thinking. He is one of the few politicians who seldom denies or disowns his statements and plays with a straight bat. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Shri Nitin Gadkari.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you, how many of you in the top 4 or 5 mantris of this Sarkar have got this gentleman's name written there? among the top 4-5. So doesn't he deserve a bigger round of applause for gracing this CNN News 18 town hall? टॉप थ्री कह रहे हैं सर। मैं आपसे जानना चाहूंगा कि हर युवा, हर लेवल के लोग जो हैं इस देश में, उनको एक चीज दिख रही है आज, वो है सड़क, और उससे आप जुड़े हैं नितिन गडकरी। तो आपको कैसा लगता है जब कोई आकर आपको कहता है कि आप शायद इस सरकार के सबसे पॉपुलर मंत्रीज में से एक हैं?
एक तो सही बात है कि मैं न कोई सोचता हूं और बहुत ज्यादा इसको सीरियसली लेता हूं। मैं एक बात सोचता हूं कि जो अक्सर मेरे कन्विक्शन में है कि पॉलिटिक्स इज ए इंस्ट्रूमेंट ऑफ सोशियो इकोनॉमिक रिफॉर्म, और जब मुझे कोई अवसर मिला है तो उसका उपयोग करके मैं कितना ज्यादा से ज्यादा काम कर सकता हूं वो करने की कोशिश करता हूं। जो काम हो जाता है उसको भूल जाता हूं, जो नहीं हो रहा उसके पीछे लगता हूं। तो मैं काम करते रहता हूं, बाकी बातों का विचार करना वो क्या है क्या नहीं, आप जैसे लोगों का काम है वही। बाकी मैं तो इतना सोचता भी नहीं, और कुछ आगे मुझे इतना ही मालूम है कि प्रॉब्लम्स क्या है, काम कहाँ अटका हुआ है, वो कौन से प्रोजेक्ट स्टॉल प्रोजेक्ट है, कैसे उसको क्लियर करना।
अभी तो आप जिस धड़ल्ले से प्रोजेक्ट्स अनाउंस कर रहे हैं, ऐसा लग रहा है कि बहुत कुछ करना बाकी है। तो जरा हमारे दर्शकों को बताइए कि आपके लिए सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट अभी एक ड्रीम प्रोजेक्ट क्या है?
देखिए, अभी केवल दिल्ली में ही आजू बाजू में एनसीईआरटी में हम लोग 65,000 करोड़ के काम कर रहे हैं। अब ये बहुत कठिन काम है, मैं दावा नहीं करता, पर दिल्ली को ट्रैफिक जाम से और एयर पोल्यूशन से मुक्त करना। तो मेरे डिपार्टमेंट तो रोड बनाना ही मेरा काम है, पर मैं दूसरे बातों पे भी लगता था, क्योंकि ऑटोमोबाइल इंडस्ट्री के साथ भी मैं जुड़ा हूं मेरे डिपार्टमेंट। तो मैंने परली के ऊपर बहुत काम किया। अभी मैं परली से बायो सीएनजी और बायो एलएनजी तैयार होता है, मैं उस एसोसिएशन का अध्यक्ष हूं। 27 प्रोजेक्ट शुरू हो गए और 135 प्रोजेक्ट प्रोसेस में है। फिर परली से अभी पानीपत में बहुत बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट आया, अभी पुरी साहब गए, तो वो बायो इथेनॉल 1 लाख लीटर और 150 टन बायो बिटुमिन। तो मैं ये चाहता हूं कि हमारे देश में परली जलाने से दिल्ली में प्रदूषण हो रहा, पंजाब हरियाणा में पड़ी है, पश्चिमी उत्तर प्रदेश में पड़ी है, टू वेस्ट टू वेल्थ, और प्रदूषण को भी बचाया जाएगा। तो दिल्ली में भी हमने एक दिल्ली UR2 रोड बनाया, रिंग रोड, अभी 2-3 महीने में इनॉग्रेट करेंगे, जिससे आप पानीपत से आते हुए पेरीफेरल रोड के बाद सीधा एयरपोर्ट आने के लिए 2 घंटे लगते थे जी। अब ये रोड से 15 मिनट में आएंगे आप शिव मूर्ति के पास। और जो 8 लेन ऊपर और 8 लेन नीचे 16 लेन रोड बनाया हमने, उसमें रोड नीचे से टनल डायरेक्ट T3 जाएगी और इधर बसंत विहार जाएगी। तो दिल्ली का प्रदूषण, ट्रैफिक जाम का हमने एक स्टडी किया, एक IT कंसल्टेंट से जी। अलग अलग जगह पर ट्रैफिक कैसे डाइवर्सिफाई हो सकता है, कौन से रोड का कैसे कम हो सकता है। तो एक कठिन काम है ये। मैं ये दावा नहीं करता कि शायद हमारे काम होने के बाद प्रदूषण कम होगा या ट्रैफिक जाम कितना कम होगा, पर मुझे लगता है कि सब्सटेंशियल परिणाम होगा।
पर एक बात बताइए कि एक तरफ आपकी सरकार ने ड्रोन पॉलिसी बनाई है, ये कहकर कि आगे जाके फ्यूचर में सड़कों पर गाड़ियां चलेंगी ही नहीं, क्योंकि हवा में सब होगा ड्रोन्स के जरिए। दूसरी तरफ आप सड़कें बना रहे हैं, तो ड्रोन्स होंगे या गाड़ियां होंगी?
आप हिंदुस्तान की जनता पर विश्वास रखिए कि हमारी जनता के पास एक एक्सपर्टाइज है। वो 2 चीज हो गया, एक पॉपुलेशन बढ़ाने का और दूसरा ऑटोमोबाइल नंबर बढ़ाने का। अब 5 आदमी और 9 गाड़ियां, 7 गाड़ियां, ऐसा है। देखो, जैसे मैं इलेक्ट्रिक, इथेनॉल, मेथेनॉल, बायोडीजल, LNG, CNG, हाइड्रोजन की बात करता हूं, तो लोग कंफ्यूज होते, बोलते आप सबकी बात कर रहे, फिर ये कैसा होगा। मेरा तू चिंता मत कर, ये पूरा आने के बाद भी डीजल पेट्रोल को बंद करना बहुत कठिन है, इसलिए जिसमें जितना दम हो उतना काम करेंगे। वैसे आप ड्रोन से कुछ नहीं होने वाला, ड्रोन के बाद गाड़ियां रहने वाली है। जो इम्पोर्टेंट चीज है कि हम पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट को प्रायोरिटी दें जी। अभी ये दिल्ली का जो पानीपत से मैंने कहा, उस रोड पर मैं इलेक्ट्रिक हाईवे बना रहा हूं जयपुर तक, प्रोसेस में है। और मेरी कल्पना है कि 3 बसेस एयर कंडीशन लग्जरी बिजनेस क्लास जैसे सीट रखकर, और जिसका टिकट रेट डीजल बस से 25 से 30% कम होगा,
चाय पानी नाश्ता भी मिलेगा और डायरेक्ट दिल्ली टू जयपुर 2.5 घंटे में एयर कंडीशन बस में बैठ के जाओगे।
क्या बात है।
तो ये पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट को बढ़ाना, फिर रोपवे, केबल कार, फेनिकुलर रेल, तो इससे मास रैपिड ट्रांसपोर्ट ऑन इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, इससे डीजल पेट्रोल का उपयोग कम होकर प्रदूषण कम होगा। अभी इलेक्ट्रिक कार आई, इलेक्ट्रिक बस आई, इलेक्ट्रिक स्कूटर आई। इसी होटल में मुझे लोग पूछते थे बहुत बार 3 साल पहले कि गाड़ी, इलेक्ट्रिक की गाड़ी रास्ते में बंद हो गई, चार्ज कैसे करना, फिर धक्का मार के ले जाना क्या। आप जैसे पत्रकार भी आपने पर पूछते थे प्रश्न, अब कोई नहीं पूछता। अब इलेक्ट्रिक बस, इलेक्ट्रिक कार, इलेक्ट्रिक स्कूटर, इलेक्ट्रिक ऑटो रिक्शा, ये ग्राउंड रियलिटी हो गई। अब मैं फ्लेक्स इंजन ला रहा हूँ। जो टोयोटा की कैमरी गाड़ी थी ना, जो 60% पेट्रोल पे और 40% बिजली तैयार करती थी, अब टोयोटा के मॉडल अगस्त में लॉन्च हो रहे हैं मेरे हाथ से, वो पूरा बायो इथेनॉल पे होगा। अब पेट्रोल का रेट 120 रुपए, इथेनॉल का 60 रुपए। पेट्रोल से पोल्यूशन, इथेनॉल से पोल्यूशन नहीं के बराबर, और वो 40% बिजली तैयार करेगा। तो मैंने ये कहा कि अगर इसका एवरेज निकाला जाए, हिसाब लगाया जाए, तो पेट्रोल की तुलना में 15 रुपए पेट्रोल का भाव होगा, इतना एवरेज, क्योंकि 40% बिजली का एवरेज वो फुकट है
जी,
और 60% जो है इथेनॉल पर, वो 60 रुपए रेट का है। तो नेचुरली सेविंग और प्रदूषण भी कम होगा। अभी स्कूटर, ऑटो रिक्शा, ये सब इसमें आई है। तो आने वाले समय में काफी चेंजेस हो रहे हैं टेक्नोलॉजी में, और एक टेक्नोलॉजी के कारण दूसरा कम होगा ऐसी संभावना नहीं है।
नहीं तो आपने जब 15 रुपए पर लीटर पेट्रोल कहा तो सबने उसको पकड़ लिया कि ये कैसे हो सकता है, और कई बार कहते हैं कि सर ख्वाब तो नहीं दिखा रहे हैं। आप कह रहे हैं दिल्ली में प्रदूषण नहीं होगा, आप कह रहे हैं कि बस से हम जयपुर जा सकेंगे एसी बस में, और अब आप कह रहे हैं कि इथेनॉल एट 60 रुपीज, यानी हाफ द प्राइस ऑफ पेट्रोल। तो ये सब डिस्टेंट ड्रीम्स हैं कि इस जीवन काल में, इस दशक में हम देख सकेंगे।
देखिए, सपने दिखाना अच्छा होता है और सपने दिखाने के बाद जनता भी खुश होती है, पर दिखाए हुए सपने जब पूरी नहीं होते हैं तो जनता उस नेता को ठोकने का काम भी करती है। मैं आपको एक बात पक्की बताता हूं, मैं मुंबई में मंत्री था, तो ये वर्ली बांद्रा सीलिंग प्रोजेक्ट, 55 फ्लाईओवर्स, मुंबई पुणे हाईवे
जी,
ये सब बना है। तब मैंने कहा था कि मुंबई से पुणे 2 घंटे में जाएंगे। तो लीडिंग न्यूज़पेपर ने एडिटोरियल लिखा था मेरे खिलाफ, ये कुछ भी बोलते हैं, कुछ भी कहते हैं। और आज क्या सच्चाई है कि दिल्ली, पुणे से मुंबई 2 घंटे में लोग जा रहे हैं। अभी मैंने कहा है कि दिल्ली से देहरादून 2 घंटे में, हरिद्वार 1.5 घंटे में, जयपुर 2 घंटे में, चंडीगढ़ 2.5 घंटे में, चंडीगढ़ से मनाली 9 घंटे लगते थे, वो 3 घंटे में, ना दिल्ली से अमृतसर 4 घंटे में, अब 9 घंटे लगते हैं। दिल्ली से कटरा 10-12 घंटे, 15 घंटे लगते हैं, अभी ये 6 घंटे में। दिल्ली से श्रीनगर 8 घंटे में, दिल्ली से मुंबई 12 घंटे में। अब इसमें से 90% तो आप एक काम कर लो, ये जनवरी के पहले हो जाएगा। और अभी आप में से
90% जनवरी से पहले हो जाएगा।
बिल्कुल। और मैं आपको एक बात बताता हूँ
जी,
मेरे 35-40 साल के जीवन में, राजनीतिक जीवन में, मैं झूठ कभी बोलता नहीं और झूठ आश्वासन देता नहीं। और मेरे तो, आपको पत्रकार तो होशियारी होते, क्या नहीं हुआ बराबर ढूंढ के निकालते। अब मैं इतनी घोषणा कर रहा हूँ, कोई तो निकाले, लगाए ब्रेकिंग न्यूज, कोई लगा नहीं सकता, क्योंकि मैं जो बोलता हूँ वो होता है, और जो होने वाला है वही मैं बोलता हूँ।
ये तो ये अगली पिक्चर का डायलॉग भी हो सकता है ना, पंच लाइन हो गया। एक बार मैंने कमिटमेंट कर दी तो मैं अपने आप की भी नहीं सुनता हूँ। लेकिन सर आपने ये मैं आपसे यही पूछने वाला था कि ये जनवरी तक आप कह रहे हैं हो जाएगा 90%, क्योंकि अगर उसके बाद चुनाव हुए, चुनाव के बाद फिर ये सब ड्रॉप हो जाएगा कि?
सर ये 90 को आप 99 लगा दो, वैसे 100 ही बोलना चाहिए, पर 1% में छोड़ रहा हूँ। आप कभी गए क्या दिल्ली देहरादून रोड देखा?
हाँ गया हूँ।
आप कभी देहरादून तक चले जाइए, मैं भी गया था, काफी काम होते हुए आ गए।
मैं वो दूसरे जो पुराने रास्ते से गया हूँ, वहां पर भी रास्ता, क्योंकि कई सारे वो हाईवेज आ गए, तो अब
नहीं, पुराने रास्ते से अभी 3.5 घंटे 4 घंटे लगते हैं।
जी,
ये जो मैं बोल रहा हूँ ये नया रोड है, अक्षरधाम से शुरू होगा, एलिवेटेड रोड है, और एकदम बागपत से जाकर सीधा देहरादून जाता है, ग्रीन अलाइनमेंट है। देखिए ये अभी ये दिल्ली मुंबई हाईवे है, अभी फिर भी हमने जयपुर के लिए एक स्पर बनाने का है, अभी दासना जाना पड़ता है, फिर भी लोग 2.5 घंटे में जा रहे हैं। अब वो दासना से घूमने के बजाय उसके पहले 10 किलोमीटर पहले ही एक रोड मिल जाएगा तो 2 घंटे में हो जाएगा जयपुर।
2 घंटे में हो जाएगा। तो आप जिस तरह से देश को जोड़ रहे हैं,
देखिए आपको सबसे बड़ी बात बताऊं, मैं पहले कश्मीर से कन्याकुमारी तक हमारे भाषण में बोलते थे।
हाँ।
पर वो कैसा था उसकी चर्चा केवल होती थी। अब मैं आपको बताता हूं, आप मनाली से रोहतांग पास जाइए, पहले 3.5 घंटे लगते थे, अब 8 मिनट में जाते हैं टनल से बाहर, 8 मिनट। फिर उसके बाद लद्दाख लेह के बीच में हम 5 टनल और रोड बना रहे हैं, उसको टाइम लगेगा पर काम चल रहे हैं। फिर लद्दाख लेह के बाद हमने कारगिल के नीचे झोजिला टनल बनाई है जो 65-70% हो गई, जिसके कारण 3.5 घंटे बचेंगे। इतना बहुत सुंदर टनल 11 किलोमीटर की। उसके बाद झेड़मोर टनल बनाई। फिर आप श्रीनगर आइए, श्रीनगर से जम्मू के बीच में हम 18 टनल बना रहे हैं, उसमें से 14 बन गई। फिर कटरा वाले रोड को कनेक्ट होंगे और कटरा से आएंगे दिल्ली, और दिल्ली आने के बाद डायरेक्ट दिल्ली से हम लोग दिल्ली मुंबई हाईवे से जुड़कर सूरत तक जाएंगे। सूरत से लेफ्ट हैंड नया रोड बना रहे हैं हम लोग, सूरत से नासिक, नासिक से अहमदनगर, अहमदनगर से सोलापुर, और सोलापुर से कर्नूल, और कर्नूल से त्रिवेंद्रम, कोचीन, हैदराबाद, चेन्नई, कन्याकुमारी, सब साउथ को जोड़ रहे हैं। अब इसमें क्या हुआ कि दिल्ली से चेन्नई का डिस्टेंस 320 किलोमीटर कम हुआ है, और पहली बार ये कश्मीर से कन्याकुमारी डायरेक्ट एक्सप्रेस हाईवे लिंक हो गई।
क्या बात है।
तो ये नेचुरली ऐसे दोनों बाजू से काफी रोड अब जुड़े हुए। आप नॉर्थ ईस्ट जाइए, कोई भी स्टेट में जाइए, आप भी ड्राइवर को पूछिए, आपको जवाब दे देगा।
देखिए, गाड़ी का परफॉर्मेंस, रोड इंप्रूव हो गया तो गाड़ी का माइलेज इंप्रूव हो रहा है, लेकिन आप जैसे जोड़ने की बात कर रहे हैं, वैसे एक कवायद बेंगलोर में भी चल रही है विपक्ष की जुड़ने की। तो
उनके पहले हमने बेंगलोर मैसूर जोड़ दिया, वो 1 घंटे में हो गया विपक्ष जाने के पहले। अब दिल्ली चेन्नई काफी पूरा हुआ है, वो पहले 5 घंटे लगते थे, अब 2 घंटे में हो जाएगा, शायद दिसंबर तक वो भी पूरा हो जाएगा।
पर ये विपक्ष के जुड़ने से कहीं आपकी गाड़ी पटरी से तो नहीं?
देखो, विपक्ष जब जुड़ने की बात करता
बीजेपी
है,
की,
देखो
जी,
एक कहावत है, अच्छी नहीं है वो, मरता क्या नहीं करता। तो जब वीक हो जाता है तो वीक लोग अक्सर इकट्ठा होने की कोशिश करते हैं। एक पार्टी जब स्ट्रांग बनती है तो वीक लोग साथ में आकर उसका मुकाबला करते हैं। तब उनको सबको पता चला कि अपने बदौलत हम इनको हरा नहीं सकते, तो बेचारे एक होने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। ठीक है, उनका अधिकार है।
पर अगर ये इस तरह से एक हुए तो कुछ कुछ ऐसे क्रिटिकल प्रदेश हैं, आप तो बहुत ज्यादा समझते हैं इसको, जहां बीजेपी को तकलीफ हो सकती है। अगर आपको
देखो, आपको याद होगा, मैं जिस दिन राजनीति में मैंने प्रवेश किया, थोड़ा उसके पहले की 71 का चुनाव था
जी,
और आप शायद, मैं उस समय स्कूल का बच्चा लड़का था।
मैं पैदा भी नहीं हुआ था।
हाँ, 75 में मैं इमरजेंसी के बाद राजनीति में आया
जी।
पर मुझे याद है तब इंदिरा जी के खिलाफ एक बड़ी आघाड़ी बनी थी। कांग्रेस संगठन, कांग्रेस, लोकदल, समाजवादी पार्टी और जनसंघ, और चारों की मतों को जोड़कर ऐसा लगता था कि खुद तो भी बहुत बड़ा होगा, हम जीतेंगे। पर उल्टा हुआ, इंदिरा जी जीत गई और बड़ी आघाड़ी हार गई। तो राजनीति में 2+2 4 कभी नहीं होते।
तो यहां पर भी आपको लगता है 2+2 4 होता?
मुझे लगता है जो काम मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में हमारी पार्टी ने और सरकार ने किया है, जो 75 साल के अमृत महोत्सव हम मना रहे हैं, और 75 साल में 60 साल कांग्रेस को मिले, जो कांग्रेस 60 साल में नहीं कर सकी वो हमने 9 साल में करके दिखाया, और वो देश की बदलती हुई तस्वीरें लोगों के सामने है, और लोग निश्चित रूप से देश के विकास के लिए भारतीय जनता पार्टी और एनडीए को मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में चुन कर देगी, ऐसा हमें विश्वास है।
अगर ये विश्वास है तो फिर क्यों नया एक गठबंधन जुड़ रहा है? कल एनडीए की बड़ी मीटिंग भी है, तो ओपी राजभर को जोड़ दिया जा रहा है, जीतन राम मांझी आ रहे हैं, महाराष्ट्र जो आपका स्टेट है वहां अजित पवार जी और एकनाथ शिंदे जी गुट मिलकर आए हैं। तो ये सब समीकरण क्यों बैठ रहे हैं? कर्नाटका में फिर आप यू सी जेडीएस इज ऑल्सो कमिंग ऑन बोर्ड, सो व्हाई इज ऑल ऑफ दिस हैपनिंग? अगर आपको लगता है कि आपने अच्छा काम किया,
राजनीति में जैसे अपोजिशन पार्टी इवाइट हो रही है, वैसे हम भी अपने मित्रों को जोड़ रहे हैं, उसमें आश्चर्य क्या है?
पर उससे आपको नहीं लगता कि बीजेपी का कोर ढीला हो जाएगा, जो आपका आइडियोलॉजिकल
देखिए
स्टैंड है?
चुनाव में ऐसा होता है कि जिस उम्मीदवार को टिकट मिलता है जिसमें इलेक्टिव मेरिट होते हैं, और लोकतंत्र में उसी पार्टी का महत्व होता है जो चुनाव जीतती है। चुनाव जीतेंगे तो हमारा रिलीवेंस रहेगा। तो चुनाव जीतने के लिए दो चीजें इंपॉर्टेंट होती है। देयर इज अ डिफरेंस बिटवीन स्ट्रेटेजी एंड कन्विक्शन। पॉलिटिक्स ऑफ कन्विक्शन हमारे पार्टी का कैरेक्टर ही है कि हम उस सिद्धांत को लेकर चल रहे हैं, पर उसके साथ साथ हम स्ट्रेटेजी के रूप में जितने लोगों को जोड़ सकते हैं और हमारे पार्टी से उनको जोड़ने का प्रयास कर सकते हैं, वो हम अटल जी थे तब से करते हुए आए हैं, आगे भी कर रहे हैं।
तो उससे आपको नहीं लगता कि पार्टी का जो कोर इथॉस है वो डाइल्यूट हो जाएगा? ऐसे
जो हमारे पास आते वो हमारे जैसे बन जाते हैं।
तो उससे जुड़ा एक और आरोप आप पर है कि आप पर यानी कि बीजेपी पर है और सरकार पर है, ये वॉशिंग मशीन वाला, कि जब तक वो विपक्ष में है या आपके साथ नहीं है तब तक वो बुरे हैं, जैसे आपके साथ जुड़ जाते हैं साफ हो जाते हैं।
अब ये तो मुझे पता नहीं है, पर एक बात जरूरी है कि पॉलिटिक्स इज ए गेम ऑफ कंपल्शन, लिमिटेशंस एंड कॉन्ट्रडिक्शंस। पॉलिटिक्स में सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज होती है कि तुम्हें चुनाव में जीतना चाहिए, तो ही सरकार में आप मेजोरिटी में आओगे, तो ही सरकार चला पाते हो। तो इट इज ए पॉलिटिकल वॉर, और इसमें हर पार्टी अपनी जीत को प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए स्ट्रेटेजिकली अलायंसेस करती है। वही हमने किया है। अब जो कल हमारे विरोधी थे आज हमारे मित्र बन गए। तो आज अपोजिशन पार्टी में नहीं हो रहा क्या?
हो रहा है।
जो केजरीवाल जी को कांग्रेस विरोध कर रही थी, जो अध्यादेश निकला है, तो वो कांग्रेस उसको सपोर्ट कर रही है। तो ये एक समय विरोध किया, एक समय सपोर्ट किया, ये थोड़ा बहुत पॉलिटिक्स में चलते ही रहता है।
हाँ, पर आपने तो यही कहा कि ऑपोजिशन इसलिए कर रही है क्योंकि आपने, जैसे आपने कहा कि मरता क्या ना करता। तो अगर वो डेस्परेशन में कर रहे हैं तो आप क्यों कर रहे हैं?
देखो, डेस्परेशन नहीं होता। हर पार्टी जो भी कुछ करती है वो अपने जीत के लिए करती है, अपने जीत को सिक्योर करने के लिए करती है, और लोकतंत्र में ये चलते हुए आ रहा है। यानी आज नहीं, इमरजेंसी के बाद जब सभी पार्टी को लगा तो पार्टियां डिसॉल्व कर दी। उस समय जनसंघ था, जनसंघ को डिसॉल्व किया गया, जनता पार्टी बनी
जी।
तो ये जो होता है, ये पॉलिटिक्स में इस प्रकार से एडिशन, सब्सट्रैक्शन, मल्टीप्लिकेशन होते ही रहता है। इट इज ए पार्ट एंड पार्सल ऑफ दिस गेम।
तो इन दिस केस आपको लगता है कि इन द लास्ट 9 years जब क्रिटिकल रेजोल्यूशंस और क्रिटिकल लॉज की बात आई है और क्रिटिकल चीजों पर जब तवज्जो की बात आई है, तो क्या सरकार अपनी बात सही रख पाई है या फिर कहीं ना कहीं विपक्ष का नैरेटिव वो हावी हुआ है? फार्म लॉज को देख लीजिए, सीएए को देख लीजिए, या फिर कोर एजेंडा ऑफ द जनसंघ से जो रहा है, 3 चीजें रही थी। एक था 370 हटाना, दूसरा था राम मंदिर के लिए आंदोलन करना, और तीसरा था यूसीसी। इन यूसीसी को ही ले लीजिए, आपको लगता है यू गॉट द नैरेटिव राइट, यू गॉट द मूड ऑफ द पीपल ऑन?
आज तो ऐसी स्थिति है कि कॉमन सिविल कोड के लिए अपोजिशन पार्टी में भी सपोर्ट है। एक बात मुझे बताइए
जी, कि
मुस्लिम देशों में भी एक कायदा नहीं है? वहां ऐसे कोई मुस्लिम देश है कि जहां उनके लिए अलग कायदा है? ये वर्ल्ड फिनोमेना है, और मानवता के आधार पर, समता के आधार पर, सोशल इक्वलिटी के आधार पर पूरे समाज के लिए एक कानून होना चाहिए। इसमें गलत क्या है? ये किसी धर्म के खिलाफ नहीं है, ये सोशल प्रोग्रेसिव थिंकिंग है कि समान सभी लोगों के लिए एक कानून हो, और इसमें सभी पंथ, धर्म, संप्रदाय मिलकर उसके लिए एक कानून होना, ये देश की यूनिटी को और इंटीग्रेशन को मजबूत करेगा। और इसलिए बीजेपी को छोड़कर बाकी भी लोग इसका सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं।
पर आपको लगता है कि ग्राउंड से ये एक आवाज निकल के आई है या ये टॉप डाउन हो रहा है? कई बार ये देखा जाता है जब टॉप डाउन करते हैं तो वर्क नहीं करता।
सर, ऐसा है कि लोगों के मन में ये भाव है तो ये ऊपर से आया है। अब राम मंदिर बना, ऊपर से आया कि नीचे से आया? पर कोर्ट से लेकर सबके भाव से आया तब बन गया 370। आज कितना कश्मीर विकसित हो रहा है, आईआईटी, इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज, एम्स आ रहे, आज इतनी टनेज बन रही, रोड बन रहे, टूरिज्म बढ़ रहा, टूरिस्ट की संख्या दुगनी हो गई, जिसके कारण एम्प्लॉयमेंट पोटेंशियल बढ़ा है। तो आज तो आर्थिक विकास में जम्मू कश्मीर में ये जो 370 के कारण उसकी इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ को दुगने से गति मिली है। क्योंकि पहले कोई जमीन नहीं, अब बड़े होटल जाना है, कोई ताज को लेना है या उबेर को लेना है, तो जम्मू में जमीनें नहीं खरीद सकते थे
जी।
अब प्रॉब्लम ये हुआ कि वो जहां लोग इन्वेस्टमेंट आ रही, फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट आ रही, यूनिवर्सिटीज आ रही, कॉलेजेस आ रहे, रिसर्च इंस्टीट्यूट्स आ रहे, वहां के एप्पल में इन्वेस्टमेंट आ रही है, कोल्ड स्टोरेज आ रहे, प्री कूलिंग प्लांट आ रहे, हाईवेज अच्छे बन रहे। आपको पता है ये श्रीनगर में रोज कितने हवाई जहाज जाते हैं? 65-70 हवाई जहाज जाते हैं, पूरे देश के टूरिस्ट जाते हैं। और टूरिज्म ऐसा सेक्टर है कि 49% ऑफ द कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर रोजगार निर्माण करने के लिए खर्चा होता है। तो उससे आज वहां निश्चित रूप से प्रगति हुई, प्रोग्रेस हुआ, तो इसका फायदा हो रहा है।
पर आपने जम्मू कश्मीर का हवाला दिया, आपने कहा कि देश भर में काफी कुछ बदल रहा है, विकास हो रहा है, पर क्या आज विकास के बेसिस पर आप कॉन्फिडेंट हैं कि फिर से 300 का आंकड़ा पार करेंगे 2024 के चुनाव के मद्देनजर, या आपको लगता है कि कहीं ना कहीं जनता इसको अब स्वाभाविक मान लेती है? हाँ, आपका काम है रोड बनाइए, आपका काम है पानी लाइए, आपका काम है बिजली दीजिए, तो इसके लिए मैं
एक समय जो पॉलिटिक्स था वो डोमिनेटेड बाय 3 C's था, कैश, कास्ट एंड क्रिमिनल।
हाँ,
अभी मैं उत्तर प्रदेश से आ रहा हूं, लॉ एंड ऑर्डर की सिचुएशन उत्तर प्रदेश में इतनी अच्छी हुई है कि कॉमन आदमी योगी जी को बहुत धन्यवाद देता है। तो अभी ये रेफरेंस नहीं रहा कैश, कास्ट एंड क्रिमिनल। जो नई जनरेशन आई है वो पॉलिटिक्स ऑफ डेवलपमेंट, पॉलिटिक्स ऑफ प्रोग्रेस, इनोवेशन, एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप, अब देश के लिए काम करना चाहती है। जो पढ़े लिखे लोग हैं, IIT के नंबर कितने बढ़ रहे हैं, इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज की संख्या कितनी बढ़ रही है, मेडिकल कॉलेज 650 हो गए। नेचुरली इतने बड़े प्रमाण पर एजुकेशन का विस्तार हो रहा है। प्राइवेट यूनिवर्सिटी 1000 से ज्यादा हो गई और वो भी रेप्यूटेड हो गई। अब कोई अमेरिका पढ़ने के लिए लंदन या इंग्लैंड, यूके नहीं जाता, सब प्रकार का हायर जो अब दुनिया के लोग अपने आते हैं। तो मैं ये कहूंगा कि इसके जो बेनिफिट है जो आम लोगों को मिल रहे हैं, हमने करीब 1400 कानून बदल दिए ईज ऑफ बिजनेस में
जी,
कि लोगों को तकलीफ ना हो। अभी RTO, मैंने परमिट से लेकर ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस तक इतने निर्णय किए, 47 डिसीजन किए कि आज घर में बैठकर लोगों को काम होते हैं। गाड़ी ट्रांसफर करना है, अगर महाराष्ट्र के नंबर की गाड़ी अगर वो दिल्ली आता है तो ट्रांसफर करने में कितनी दिक्कतें थी
जी।
तो बहुत सी छोटी छोटी बातों को निकालकर ऐसे कानून थे उसको हमने समाप्त किया। ईज ऑफ बिजनेस बढ़ाया, डिजिटल इंडिया को बढ़ाया। अभी पेमेंट अनुदान का, ग्रांट का, अब इतने किसानों के डायरेक्ट खाते में पैसे जा रहे हैं। उज्ज्वला का बेनिफिट डायरेक्ट जा रहा है। अनेक प्रकार की स्कॉलरशिप बच्चों के अकाउंट में जा रही। पहले ये जाती नहीं थी, 2-2 महीने 3-3 महीने करप्शन होता था। ये जो सुधार हुआ है ईज ऑफ बिजनेस में, एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव रिफॉर्म हुआ है, डिजिटल सिस्टम्स हुई है, डायरेक्ट पेमेंट मिले हैं, अभी रूपी कार्ड आया, भीम कार्ड आया, जो कुछ चेंजेस हुए उसके कारण लोगों का जो सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट है उसमें जो उनका लाइफ है वो सुसह्य हुआ है। तो गरीब आदमी का भी हुआ है। और जब अड़चन आई कोविड के समय
जी,
तो हमने कितने बड़े प्रमाण पर अनाज दिया लोगों को। तो मैं ये मानता हूं कि जो इफेक्टिव गवर्नेंस के साथ जो 60 साल में कांग्रेस पार्टी नहीं कर सकी, वो हमने जो 9 साल में करके दिखाया है, यही हमारा रिपोर्ट कार्ड है। और इसी के आधार पर जनता ये पूरा देखते हुए हमको फिर से चुन।
तो फिर ऐसा क्यों है कि कर्नाटक में आपको हार झेलनी पड़ी? महाराष्ट्र जो कि संघ का फाउंडिंग माना जाता है, जो कि पॉलिटिकल ऑफशूट बीजेपी संघ से है, आप भी संघ से जुड़े थे और संघ से ही आप पॉलिटिक्स बीजेपी में आए। केरल को देख लीजिए, केरल में सबसे ज्यादा डेंसिटी ऑफ शाखास अगर आप देखें लैंडमार्क्स पे सबसे ज्यादा केरल में है, लेकिन वहां पर बीजेपी नहीं है। महाराष्ट्र में आप देखिए कैसे सरकार है मिली जुली, कभी इधर टूट रहा है कभी वहां टूट रहा है। अजीत पवार जी 4 साल में 3 बार शपथ ले चुके हैं। तो ये क्यों हो रहा है?
देखिए, महाराष्ट्र में भी चुनाव तो कोई हुआ नहीं, होने वाला है। जब चुनाव होगा तब पता चलेगा क्या होगा। और कर्नाटक के चुनाव में नेशनल इश्यू पर चुनाव नहीं होते हैं
जी, जो
चुनाव स्टेट इश्यूज पर होते हैं। तो कभी कभी इसका मतलब नेशनल इश्यूज डिफीट हुए ऐसा कहना भी अन्यायपूर्वक होगा। तो मुझे लगता है हर चुनाव के विषय अलग होते हैं, रेफरेंसेस अलग होते हैं और जनता के मन के मुद्दे भी अलग होते हैं। तो नेचुरली मेरा विश्वास है कि जब केंद्र का चुनाव होगा
जी, तो
पॉलिटिक्स ऑफ प्रोग्रेस एंड डेवलपमेंट, ये जो काम मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में हमारी सरकार ने किया है, निश्चित रूप से जनता का इसको सपोर्ट मिलेगा।
अच्छा, एक कुछ प्रश्न है यस एंड नो पर, उस पर जाएंगे और फिर ऑडियंस से भी प्रश्न पूछेंगे। पर एक मैंने उड़ती हुई खबर सुनी, तो जैसे कहते हैं ना ग्रेप वाइन, कॉरिडोर्स में ये बात हो रही है कि हो सकता है ये चुनाव इसी साल हो जाए, कहीं ना कहीं सारे स्टेट्स मिलकर और लोकसभा मिलकर एक वन नेशन वन पोल, ये एक और आधार रहा है कि देश में एक साथ एक चुनाव होना है। आप क्या इसके पक्ष में हैं? आप क्या इसके, आपको लगता है इसकी तैयारी है?
इस विषय पर मैं कोई मत व्यक्त नहीं करूंगा और ऐसी कोई संभावना है कि नहीं इसका कोई मेरे साथ, मुझे तो कोई दिखती नहीं, कोई चर्चा भी नहीं हुई है।
अच्छा, मैं आपसे ये पूछता हूं कि आज की तारीख में अगर चुनाव होते हैं, आपको लगता है कि बीजेपी को देश में बहुमत मिलेगा?
देखो, आज हो क्या कल हो, जब भी लोकसभा के चुनाव होंगे तो मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में एनडीए को निश्चित रूप से प्रचंड बहुमत मिलेगा, ऐसा मुझे विश्वास है।
ऐसा विश्वास है। अच्छा, एक और मैं व्यक्तिगत जानना चाहता हूं, आप काफी टाइम से हाइड्रोजन पावर्ड कार में घूम रहे हैं, हम लोग को कब मौका मिलेगा?
देखो, हाइड्रोजन चार प्रकार का है। पहला हाइड्रोजन कोयले से तैयार होता है, दैट इज ब्लैक हाइड्रोजन
जी।
जो पेट्रोलियम से होता है वो ब्राउन हाइड्रोजन, और जो पानी से बायोमास से तैयार होता है वो ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन। हाइड्रोजन के लिए क्या है कि अभी बंगलोर में इलेक्ट्रोलाइजर की फैक्ट्री है। हम वर्ल्ड में, इंडिया इज नंबर 1 हाईएस्ट मैन्युफैक्चरर ऑफ इलेक्ट्रोलाइजर। तो इलेक्ट्रोलाइजर के पावर लगती है, तो 1 केजी हाइड्रोजन को 50 यूनिट पावर लगती है। तो कम से कम भी कीमत निकाले तो 150 रुपए पावर की हो जाती है। अब ये जो हमारे देश में बायोमास को ये बायोडाइजेस्टर में डालकर उन्होंने उसी को विदाउट पावर अब हाइड्रोजन तैयार किया है, तो इसमें काफी रिसर्च चल रहा है। फिर हाइड्रोजन तैयार होने के बाद वो गाड़ी में भरना, वो फिलिंग स्टेशन, वो 3.5 करोड़ के। अभी 4 दिन पहले पुरी साहब के साथ मेरे यहाँ मीटिंग हुई थी और मैंने उनको कहा कि इसके फिलिंग स्टेशन के बारे में, इसकी मैन्युफैक्चर हाइड्रोजन मिशन है, अलग अलग प्रकार के आईआईटी इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज में प्रयोग शुरू है। अब मेरे पास जो गाड़ी है उसका नाम है मिराई
जी।
मिराई ये जापानी वर्ड है, तो मिराई का अर्थ है फ्यूचर। तो ये मैं अभी हाइड्रोजन फरीदाबाद के इंडियन ऑयल के इंस्टीट्यूट से भरता हूँ। तो अभी धीरे धीरे, आज मैं इसका उत्तर नहीं दे सकता, पर अप्रोक्सीमेटली अंदाज से बता रहा हूँ ताकि यू डोंट टेक इट माय कमिटमेंट, पर 2 साल के अंदर हाइड्रोजन फिलिंग स्टेशन और हाइड्रोजन की गाड़ियां मिलेगी। अभी कुछ बसेस भी तैयार की है
जी,
और टाटा ने भी तैयार किया। और अभी तो एक अच्छी बात ऐसी हुई है कि टाटा और लेलैंड ने आईसी इंजन में हाइड्रोजन डालने की व्यवस्था की है। फिर कंस्ट्रक्शन इक्विपमेंट में भी हाइड्रोजन आ रहा है। तो आने वाले समय में बहुत, अभी इलेक्ट्रिक में जैसे चेंजेस हुए, लिथियम आयन बैटरी थी
जी,
अब सोडियम आयन, जिंक आयन, एल्यूमिनियम आयन, नई केमिस्ट्री आ रही। अब जिंक, अभी सोडियम आयन, अपना ये लिथियम आयन बैटरी में हमें जम्मू में एक बड़ा स्टॉक मिला है। ऐसा कहते हैं कि वर्ल्ड में से 6% लिथियम वहां है। और हम 1200 टन लिथियम हर साल इंपोर्ट करते हैं। अगर वो निकल गया तो आज $150 उसकी कीमत जो आ रही है बैटरी की, वो 100 रुपए पे आएगी, तो पेट्रोल और इलेक्ट्रिक गाड़ी की कीमत सेम होगी। वी आर वेटिंग फॉर दैट। लोग काम कर रहे हैं, अलग अलग प्रकार के स्टार्टअप काम कर रहे हैं, कंपनीज काम कर रही है। हम बहुत इसमें आगे निकले हैं। 2 साल के अंदर इन सब इसमें काफी चेंजेस दिखेंगे।
चलिए, फिंगर्स क्रॉस्ड ऑन दैट। रुकिए ऑडियंस प्रश्न से पहले, सर आपके पास वो जो प्लाकार्ड है उसका प्रयोग करने का समय आ गया है। आप देखिए, एक तरफ यस लिखा है, एक तरफ नो लिखा है। तो मैं आपसे कुछ प्रश्न पूछूंगा, आप यस और नो प्लाकार्ड दिखा सकते हैं। मेरा पहला प्रश्न है, मुझे बताया गया कि आप फूडी हैं, आपको खाना बहुत पसंद है, तो आप डाइट कंट्रोल करने की कोशिश करते हैं पर होता नहीं है?
मेरा वजन 135 किलो।
यस या नो पर बता दीजिए। हाँ,
नहीं, मैं अभी काफी कंट्रोल करता हूँ। मेरी नीयत में कमी नहीं आई है, पर खाने में कमी आई है।
कभी यू कैन बी जेनरस विद योर अप्लॉज, लेडीज एंड जेंटलमैन, प्लीज। थैंक यू।
135 किलो से मैं 90 किलो पे आया हूँ। मेरा 45 किलो वजन कम हुआ है।
क्या बात है, लवली। पर कभी आपसे कोई मिलने आया है और खाली पेट लौटा है?
मैं खाता भी और खिलाता हूँ।
कभी ऐसा हुआ है कि आप कहते कुछ हैं और लोग, मीडिया कुछ और समझ लेती है? यस नो आपको मत दिखाना पड़ेगा प्लीज।
नहीं, ये तो यस। इसका कारण कैसा है कि जिनकी ताकत नहीं होती सरकार पर टीका टिप्पणी करने की, वो डर के कारण वो हमारे स्टेटमेंट को उल्टा तिल्टा करके एक जन वेबसाइट पे डालता है, फिर आप जैसे बड़े लोग उसको न्यूज में लेकर दिखा देते हैं। ये पत्रकारिता ठीक नहीं है। अगर आपको किसी के खिलाफ बोलना है तो तुम्हारी हिम्मत है, तुम बोलो ना, हमारा उपयोग क्यों करते हो? अगर हमने बोला है तो हमारा उपयोग करो। तो यही बात है कि बहुत बार मीडिया में कुछ लोग ऐसे हैं कि जिनको न्यूज तैयार करना, बस सच्चाई से कोई लेना देना, ये नहीं होना चाहिए। वी हैव टू मेंटेन द क्रेडिबिलिटी ऑफ एवरी सेक्टर, उसमें मीडिया भी आती है।
सर, आप जो यहाँ बोल रहे हैं वो वैसे का वैसे ही जा रहा है, तो हम कुछ डिस्टॉर्ट नहीं करने वाले। तो अब आप एक अगला प्रश्न, फिर आपको येस नो दिखाना पड़ेगा। मैंने ये सुना है कि आप डांट लगाते हैं बहुत सबको। कोई ऐसा है जो आपको डांट लगाता है या लगाती है?
मैं भी डांट खाता हूं और डांट लगाता भी।
तो आप बताइए कौन आपको डांटता है? नितिन गडकरी जी को डांट लगाने की हिम्मत किस में है?
देखिए, मैं बहुत अच्छी मैनेजमेंट का बात रखता हूं कि ए नाम के व्यक्ति ने ए स्क्वायर काम किया और बी नाम के व्यक्ति ने बी स्क्वायर काम किया
जी,
तो टोटल वर्क इज ए स्क्वायर प्लस बी स्क्वायर। बट व्हेन ए एंड बी कम्स टुगेदर, थिंक्स टुगेदर एंड वर्क्स टुगेदर, ए प्लस बी ब्रैकेट में स्क्वायर, तो इसका जवाब आता है ए स्क्वायर प्लस बी स्क्वायर प्लस ट्वाइस ए बी,
2ab,
एंड ट्वाइस ए बी इज द रिजल्ट ऑफ कलेक्टिव टीम स्पिरिट। तो मैं जब अभी मेरे अधिकारियों के साथ बैठता हूं तो मैं उनको बोलता हूँ मेरा व्यू है, आपका अलग हो तो मुझे क्रिटिसाइज करिए, डोंट बॉदर जी, मैं आपकी बात को समझने की कोशिश करता हूँ। आइदर यू कन्विंस मी और कन्विंस बाय मी।
ठीक।
तो मुझे कभी कभी मैं किसी से भी बात करते हुए कोई मुझे क्रिटिक होता है और मुझे बोलता है कि तुम गलत बोल रहे हो, तो मैं उसको नाराज नहीं होता, मैं सुन लेता हूँ और समझता हूँ कि अगर ये सही में है तो सुधारना चाहिए।
अच्छा, फिर
और वैसे पत्नी तो डांटती रहती है।
वही तो मैं आपसे जानना चाहता था।
एक बार उसने मुझे बताया था कि तुम बता रहे हो कि पानी से हाइड्रोजन निकलेगा, वैसे वो राजनीति में मेरे परिवार में कोई नहीं है। हाँ। तो हमारे यहाँ बात भी नहीं होती। तो एक बार उसने कहा मैं सुनती हूँ आपने कहा कि पानी से हाइड्रोजन निकलेगा, हाइड्रोजन से गाड़ी चलेगी। अब मेरा ही तो विश्वास नहीं बैठ रहा तुम्हारे ऊपर, तो दुनिया का क्या बैठे। तब मेरे ध्यान में आया कि मेरे में और लोगों में बहुत अंतर है। फिर मैंने विक्रम किर्लोस्कर को फोन किया, जो टोयोटा इंडिया का चेयरमैन थे, अभी देहांत हो गया उनका। मैंने कहा विक्रम मुझे हाइड्रोजन की गाड़ी चाहिए। बोले सर कहाँ से लो? मैंने बोला आई डोंट नो एनीथिंग, मुझे चाहिए। तो कहीं से लाओ? बोला क्या हुआ? बोला मेरी पत्नी भी मेरे ऊपर विश्वास नहीं करती, इसलिए तो फिर मैंने वो हाइड्रोजन की गाड़ी लाई और मैंने सब मुख्यमंत्रियों को, योगी जी आते सबको घुमाता हूँ, ये देखो हाइड्रोजन पे गाड़ी चलती है। क्योंकि मैं पेट्रोल डीजल को और गैस को इस देश से हद्दपार करने की इच्छा मन में रखता हूँ।
रखते हैं। चलिए आगे जाके होता है कि नहीं। अगला प्रश्न सर, फिर से प्लकार्ड। कभी ऐसा हुआ कि आपने किसी को कोई और समझकर उससे लंबी बातचीत की हो?
ऐसा नहीं हुआ।
अच्छा, चलिए, लोकसभा 2024 लड़ने की तैयारी है आपकी?
पार्टी निर्णय करेगी।
आपकी तैयारी है कि नहीं?
मेरी तैयारी की जरूरत ही नहीं, मैं टिकट मिल गया तो जीतने वाला हूँ। मेरे यहाँ सब पार्टी मेरे को सपोर्ट करती है, तो कोई प्रॉब्लम ही नहीं है।
कभी आपको लगता है इतने लंबे करियर में कभी ऐसा कोई लम्हा आया कि आपको यार ये मेरे साथ नाइंसाफी हुई?
मुझे कभी नहीं लगता।
सर कौन दिखाना पड़ेगा?
हाँ,
प्लीज।
नो। और मैं देखो मेरी औकात और हैसियत से मुझे बहुत ज्यादा मिला है और मैं कभी लोग अच्छा भी कहे बुरा भी कहे, मैं अपना काम करते रहता हूँ और मैं व्यक्तिगत आनंद लेता हूँ। जब सुनना है तो गाने सुनता हूँ, गजल सुनता हूँ, जो है मैं अपना लाइफ अपने हिसाब से चलता हूँ। मुझे आप क्या बोल रहे हैं और क्या कह रहे हैं इससे कोई लेना देना नहीं।
अच्छा, लास्ट टू, गाने का आपको शौक है?
हाँ, सुनते रहता हूँ।
गाते भी हैं?
नहीं। मैं बाथरूम सिंगर हूँ। गाता।
अच्छा, कभी कोई इंपॉर्टेंट मीटिंग बंक की है ये कह के यार तबीयत खराब है?
कभी नहीं की।
कभी नहीं, तो नो फिर से प्लीज। अंतिम प्रश्न, कभी दुश्मन से दोस्ती निभानी पड़ी है?
मेरा दुश्मन ही नहीं हुई।
क्या? मैं
पार्लियामेंट में मेरे डिपार्टमेंट पर जब बोल रहा था तो 75 मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट फ्रॉम ऑल पॉलिटिकल पार्टी
जी
सबने मेरा अभिनंदन किया और सबने मुझे धन्यवाद दिया। तब मैंने कहा कि मैं आरएसएस वाला हूँ, बीजेपी वाला हूँ, मेरी अपनी आइडियोलॉजी और आप इसके विरोध में हो, फिर भी आप सब लोग मुझे अच्छा कह रहे हो, इसमें मुझे बहुत आपका मैं आभारी हूँ, धन्यवाद देता हूँ। मेरे को कोई अपोजिशन, मैं काम में भी डिस्क्रिमिनेशन नहीं करता। सही काम जो होगा, कानूनी काम होगा, वो कोई भी आए उसका कर देता हूँ।
ठीक सर, मैंने तो समय आपसे काफी ले लिया। We have run out of time. We're going to ask, I'm putting up Tushar there. Let's start with Tushar and then the lady here. And then we take two questions. Quickly.
Good evening, sir. देश में जो भी सड़कें बन रही हैं, एक्सप्रेसवे बन रहे हैं, हाईवे बन रहे हैं, मैंने लद्दाख में देखे, सिक्किम में देखे, असम में देखे, खुद मुझे गाड़ी चलाने का बहुत शौक है तो मैं घूमता रहता हूं। एक जो दुविधा आती है, जो रॉन्ग साइड ड्राइविंग है, उस पे अभी भी बहुत स्ट्रांग लॉ नहीं है एक्सप्रेसवे पे, और उससे कहीं ना कहीं जो एक पूरी एफिशिएंसी है उस एक्सप्रेसवे की, वो अंडरमाइन होती है। तो उसके अगेंस्ट कोई और स्ट्रॉन्गर लॉ आ सकता है जहां रॉन्ग साइड ड्राइविंग को, चाहे वो बस हो, गाड़ी हो, पब्लिक हो, प्राइवेट हो, वो व्हीकल इंपाउंड हो, मतलब लोगों को एकदम डिस्करेज किया जाए एक्सप्रेसवे से रॉन्ग साइड जाने
मैं बताऊं, अभी एक मेरठ, दिल्ली मेरठ हाईवे पर
जी
एक रॉन्ग साइड से एक स्कूल
and I see it that way. So I want to stress to begin with that I'm not sort of suddenly turning out to be a lovey-dovey voice, but on foreign policy, I think by and large, and I used to be a critic at the beginning of the Modi administration of some of their failings, but I think they've really touched all the bases reasonably well. I mean, I remember the first year of Mr. Modi's prime ministership, he traveled to 27 countries, and not one of them was an Islamic country. And I made a bit of a fuss about that as a Congress MP and as a voice in the public space. And I'm delighted to say that what he's done subsequently in outreach to the Islamic world has been exemplary. In fact, it could not be bettered. We have outstanding relations with major Muslim countries, particularly in the Gulf, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and so on. And that's something which I think is to the credit of India and of the government. So I'm not going to take that. I mean, I'm happy to take back my earlier criticism.
Okay, but there are challenges therein as well, and the biggest seems to be China. What would the Congress have done differently with clearly a big power, a bigger economic power, a bigger military power that is hell-bent on changing the status quo, forcibly that too?
Sure, but you know, there's something there, Zaka, that we part company. When it comes to national security, we're all one. And I don't think anyone would have any difference of view on that. What we were not happy about was the Prime Minister seemingly giving the Chinese a free pass by saying that they haven't taken any Indian territory, because our concern is there was basically an unspoken modus vivendi for the last almost half a century, going back to the last shot fired in anger on the border was in 1976. Thereafter, look, I claim my borders up to there, you claim your borders up to here, so you patrol here on Monday and I patrol there on Tuesday, and we keep it going. I'm only partially making light of it, but that was more or less the way it worked. There was no shot fired in anger, there were very few incidents of guns being pointed at each other. We had worked it out. What happened then after was that the Chinese came into this space and occupied it with enduring structures, took over places, essentially made patrolling we had been doing all the way up to April, May of 2020 impossible for our army. Now that's, whether it's technically Indian territory or still disputed territory that they've occupied, is a different issue. Our Prime Minister, we felt, should not have given the Chinese a free pass on that. That's one area on which the Congress was critical. A second concern we have is, you know, there's a number of places that are not entirely comfortable right across the LAC. We've talked about Ladakh mainly because that's where the 20 Jawans were killed, but you go all the way up to Arunachal. Now what you're seeing is there are a number of points which we used to patrol which are no longer accessible to us. In Ladakh, there was this paper that came out that the government quickly disowned, which said by senior police officers in the area that 26 out of 65 patrolling points are no longer accessible to our folks. That's bad news. Now, I understand that our business community wants to import Chinese goods. Our manufacturers feel that China has a lot to offer us that we can't do without. But that on the one hand, we go around doing something frankly rather tokenistic like banning 58 Chinese apps, a slap on the wrist. And we don't do anything about the extraordinary dependence we have on China for imports, which continue to grow. The trade deficit between our two countries is over $90 billion in China's favor. And trade went as high as $139 billion last year. There's something about that that isn't right. Whether the government has failed to help businesses recalibrate their needs, whether simply they have not explored enough alternatives, or whether they basically accepted that they have no choice but to live with China, it doesn't send a particularly healthy signal. Foreign Minister Jaishankar has very clearly said we can't have normal relations
Yeah.
until the status quo ante is restored on the border. But there's been absolutely no move by China to come back to what the status quo was before the tragic events of 2020. And since they're not going to do that, what is our posture? Why is it that the government won't discuss this in Parliament? Why won't they take the nation into confidence as to what our constraints are, what our vision is, how we hope to move forward? You know, there are, frankly, 20 deaths that the government still is accountable for, and it needs to find some answers.
All right, let's talk a little bit domestic politics as well. All roads today seem to be leading to Bangalore. There's the big opposition meeting, unity meeting, and so on. To explain this to our viewers, imagine this is a hall of people who are your potential voters. Why would they vote for a ragtag bunch of about 20-odd parties with no declared face and whose unity very much is in question?
Well, first of all, no one's voting for all 20 parties. The point is precisely that they should come and find common ground, perhaps a common minimum program one day, and so on. But the idea would be that where some parties are particularly strong, theirs would be the face that's presented to the electors in their states, and in other states others would be, in order not to divide the vote. So the logic was excessively simple. Some analysts saying, well, you know, BJP won a majority with 37% of the vote, the rest of us have 63, therefore with 63 we can defeat 37 and be united. But in our system it doesn't work that way, because each parliamentary seat is what you got to count. And from the BJP's 303, I believe there were only 48 seats which the two top opposition parties could have defeated the BJP in if they had not been dividing each other's votes. So that's only part of the answer. But the other part is that if we're going to put up a formidable fight, we need...
Thank you very much, Dr. Tharoor. It's always difficult as a TV anchor to be interviewing or moderating a discussion with somebody who's been described as a wordsmith. Is it true that preponed got attested to your name?
Actually, no. It's a nice thing to say. I briefly thought it might be. So I floated the query out in public, and I got a very helpful response from the Oxford English Dictionary saying that though it had not been in common use, somebody in 1914 had used it in a letter in the New York Times or something, and somebody in 1950 had used it in a government document. So I can't claim, since both those dates were before I was born, I can't claim to have originated it. But I'm happy to put it back into circulation in India sometime in the 70s.
All right, so let's start with the G20 presidency. This is the year of India's G20 presidency. I believe that over 100 G20 meetings have happened in the course of the last 1 year during India's presidency. How do you see India seizing this moment? Is it a sort of an announcement that India has arrived on the world stage, much like, let's say, the Beijing Olympics was for China?
No, it's actually been quite remarkable because, you know, to begin with, none of us expected this. The G20 chairmanship rotates, and it rotates every year. We might even have had it the previous year, but we swapped with Indonesia, so we got it this year. But what India did brilliantly, I think, was to, as you say, take it to the people, not just 100, I think it's more like 200 meetings, 58 cities, 32 work streams. So they suddenly made the G20 a kind of buzzword in India in a way that other countries that have hosted G20 meetings had failed to do. So full credit to India for seizing the opportunity, sort of pushing it as a kind of people's G20 by involving youth groups and civil society groups and think tanks. All of that's happened. And definitely it has, you know, put India sort of on the consciousness of these 20 countries and their senior officials and ministers beyond any shadow of a doubt. And I think that's been quite remarkable. I think in many ways for India, it's one more sort of aspect of our soft power. You can take people to Hampi and to Srinagar and you showcase our diversity, you showcase so many aspects of our rich culture and so on. That helps. And to my mind, I've been a long advocate of soft power as India's strength, and I think this was one very good example of it.
Let's talk about hard power. I was there in the US when the Prime Minister visited a few weeks back. We had the recent visit to France, all the defense deals, the big tech deals. Do you see a sense in global capitals that they see India as the country to take a long bet on?
Oh yeah, I don't think that anyone feels they can afford to ignore India. That's out of the question. That's been evolving since the beginning of the century. And I would say that what's interesting is that it's straddled both parties in our system and all governments in major countries. In other words, of course, Russia's only had Mr. Putin, but if you look at America, they've had Republican and Democratic presidents. We've had in France a series of different administrations. But right across, there's been the sense that India is a force to be reckoned with on the world stage, a country that must be taken seriously. And I think that the government has done well to work assiduously at it and take this up. I should preface this by saying that, to be honest, right from the days when I used to chair the Foreign Affairs Committee in Parliament, I took the line that there is no such thing as a BJP foreign policy or a Congress foreign policy. There's only India's foreign policy and India's national interests. And when it comes to our place in the world, we are all Indians, and I see it that way. So I want to stress to begin with that I'm not sort of suddenly turning out to be a lovey-dovey voice, but on foreign policy,